abstained.
Which is a perfect microcosm of the Tory party at war with itself over the right bill, but also got two big hitters from the BBC on whether Gary Lineker can survive by his deliberate flouting of the social media guideline rules. Not my verdict, that is the verdict of the BBC chairman, Samir Shah.
And also, we're going to be keeping an eye on this story of Gaynor Lord, the missing mother in Norfolk. Real echoes of the Nicola Bulley story, of course, from earlier this year, but we're going to keep you posted if we hear any news about her recovery, hopefully her return to her family before Christmas. And we've got Carol Malone and Sam Lister in the studio, so there's always fireworks with that. We're going to be talking, one of the stories is about these loyalty cards in supermarkets. Have you seen them? Have you seen the price difference?
Yeah.
If you're part of a loyalty scheme with a supermarket, the difference in the price...
It can be 20%.
Oh, yeah, and the rest. Some of them it's like half price if you're in their loyalty scheme.
I'm not in any of them.
No, I can believe that. But do you know what? Why? Because they're selling your data. They're selling your data to advertisers. Are you aware of it? And does it make you feel a little bit kind of ripped off and manipulated? All that and a lot more. Don't go anywhere.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 9:30 on Thursday, the 14th of December. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Missing mum search. Police are appealing for help in their hunt for a Norwich mother of three who's been missing for 5 days. We'll have the latest.
And the continuing repercussions from Rwanda. Rishi Sunak says he's working tirelessly to get the planes off the ground, despite opposition from Tory MPs.
And another Tory suspension incoming. Committee on Standards is recommending that Blackpool South MP Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. Could this lead to another by-election?
And are Gary Lineker's days numbered? Let's hope so. The next chairman of the BBC, Samir Shah, hinted Gary Lineker's tweets may have broken laws, and we're talking to two very senior former BBC executives who agree.
This last one, the one that identified specifically two politicians, seems to me on the face of it a breach of those guidelines.
And great consumer story this. Sainsbury's and Tesco's make £300 million from your data in loyalty schemes. Have you noticed the massive price differences? Let us know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.com. Are you aware that's what you're signing up to when you get onto one of these schemes? Let us know your thoughts this morning on everything we're discussing. GBViews at gbnews.com. Give us your name and also maybe let us know where you are watching or listening from. First, though, here's the very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Good morning, it's 9:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Committee on Standards is recommending Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. An investigation was launched after the Blackpool South MP was filmed offering to leak confidential information to gambling industry chiefs. Mr Benton was secretly being filmed by reporters for The Times, who offered him between £2,000 and £4,000 for 2 days' work. The Parliamentary Committee has been looking into allegations that his actions caused significant damage to the reputation of the House. The Prime Minister prepares to double down for the next stage of the Rwanda bill as Tory MPs remain indecisive. Rishi Sunak's emergency legislation won a vote in the Commons only after 38 Tory MPs abstained. Some MPs call for the bill to be tightened, asking to deny asylum seekers individual appeals. But the government says it must remain within international law and assures his concerned peers Rwanda will not take deportees who have no legal recourse to Strasbourg. The UK has signed an international treaty with Japan and Italy to develop a new generation of stealth fighter jets. The deal will aim to build military planes with supersonic capability, including being able to provide 10,000 times more data than current systems. The headquarters for the Global Combat Air Programme will be based in the UK. The planes will take to the skies in 2035 and serve as successor to the RAF Typhoon. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
Very good morning. It's 9:34.
Well, Rishi Sunak has dismissed dissent over the Rwanda bill by Tory MPs as mere debating science.
You nearly called it a dating society.
Make it more interesting. And said he's working tirelessly to get the planes off the ground.
That's right. So could the rebels cause trouble for Sunak in the new year?
Well, joining us now is one of those. He's the Conservative MP for Bournemouth East, Tobias Elwood. Tobias, morning. It's not the first time you've been not supporting your government in the division lobbies. What's your problem with the Rwanda scheme as it stands?
Well, thanks for letting me on. Firstly, let's say, start from the top, Rishi Sunak has navigated the party into far calmer political waters and developed a really comprehensive migration strategy, which I think has been overlooked in the last couple of days. It's really reaping dividends. We've got those returns to Albania and Georgia, greater collaboration with France. We're tackling the criminal gangs, and there's new legal migration rules, which I wish had come in a long time ago, that will see a reduction of about 300,000 in net migration. These are all good things. I'm really sorry to see how the flight to Rwanda have become so totemic, an issue to be achieved under almost any cost. The reason why I stress this has always been one part of a wider strategy to absolutely tackle illegal immigration. That's what people want to actually see. But it's been elevated to this utopian solution. We've got to get that flight out there. We're going to tackle the small boat problem. It's the hill to die on. And I'm very sorry that is the case, because that shouldn't be. The job of legislators is to scrutinise. And there's some real problems with this bill. That's why I abstained. I can't support any policy that then actually dictates Parliament determining if a country is safe. And that's actually in clause 2 of the bill. Every decision maker must conclusively treat the Republic of Rwanda as a safe country. It's not up to Parliament to make that judgment. And then there's this issue to do with disapplying the Human Rights Act. And then, of course, it puts us in a challenge with the ECHR as well on interim solutions. For these reasons, I couldn't support this particular bill. And I stress, I'm really sorry that it's overshadowing all the other good things that we're doing, not just in this area, but in the other aspects of British policy, given, tackling inflation, dealing with the cost of living crisis, our work in Ukraine and so forth. Bigger stuff overshadowed by flights to Rwanda.
The thing is, Tobias, it's in the paper today to say that 1% of people who arrive on the small boats get sent home again. 1%. And we're spending £1 billion every 100 days on taxpayers' money to house people who arrive by these means. So the frustration of the British public is surely what Rishi Sunak is trying to overcome by what you would see as usurping our democratic or a jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction.
Thank you, Andrew. Jurisdiction for our legal process and our democratic process. But what do we do then if you aren't happy for Parliament to make that decision?
No, I'm sorry, but we're mixing things up here. I just read a list out of things that are actually impacting the numbers. They've dropped by 1/3. We're moving in the right direction. There is no data anywhere that's been accumulated to say that this would act as a deterrent, the flights themselves. The people that you're speaking about that are stuck here, that's a processing issue. Many of them have been stuck there for over 400 days. That's nothing to do with flights to Rwanda. They wouldn't even get on a flight yet until they'd been processed. And we're now looking at that. The Home Office has got more people working on that. But the bigger question here, which we're not focusing on, which we're almost in denial of, is why are these individuals leaving the countries in the first place? It's because governance has collapsed. Security has disappeared completely. Countries that we've wandered into over the last decade or so, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and so forth. And then we've lost strategic sort of patience to be involved. And then we wonder why those countries collapse. And then those individuals then want to come to Europe. The challenge we have in the UK is actually bigger in Germany. It's bigger in France. It's bigger in Italy. It's bigger in Greece. We need to be working with our continental partners to look at the problem at source. Climate change is going to see these numbers that we have at the moment, they will be a walk in the park compared with the biblical scale of migration we're going to see over the next couple of decades.
Tobias, how do you know it's not going to be a deterrent?
I'm happy to be proved wrong. I'm saying that.
But why not give it a chance?
At the moment,
Tobias, why not give it a chance?
Numbers-wise, it would deal with 1% of those that are coming this way. But again, looking at the bill, any individual that claims, for example, that they are a homosexual or have political issues and so forth, then their considerations would then move to the courts. So our courts will be clogged up. If they've taken the risk, paid a lot of money to a criminal gang to get across the channel, then they'll be told and instructed, make sure that you make a claim to say that you're not sure of your sexuality, for example. They will do whatever they can to avoid going to Rwanda. And even if those Rwanda flights did get going, they would actually be able to cater, because of the timetabling, for 1% of those making the journey. So you tell me whether that's a deterrent. I'm happy to be proved wrong.
You're not happy to be proved wrong. But you're not
or gone anywhere to say, is this going to deter you from going to Britain or going anywhere else?
Tobias, you're not happy. Tobias, you're not happy to be proved wrong because you're not supporting the bill. You're not prepared to give it a chance.
I'm not giving it a chance because it breaches international law. It's nothing to do with it. I'm happy with the concept of us taking people to another place. Even the Supreme Court has said that is okay. I'm not happy with supporting a bill that sees the United Kingdom that helped write and define international law. We uphold and craft international law. This bill says, no, we're going to rip up international law. That's not a good look when our world is getting more dangerous, not less, when other countries are choosing to ignore international law, and we're turning around and saying, absolutely.
Sure. Let's bring in your colleague, Philip Davis, who is with us here. And Philip, you voted for the bill. So what is Tobias wrong about?
Pretty much everything, I think, from what I've heard there, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I don't understand why he says that Parliament shouldn't be determining which countries are safe and which countries aren't. Right. I mean, the UK government has always done that. In the Labour government's day, we used to have a white list of countries that were considered safe and where people couldn't claim asylum from because they were considered safe. This has always happened in the UK. I don't know why Tobias seems to think it's fine for the government to make that decision, but terrible for Parliament to make that decision. So I've no idea where he's coming from there, to be perfectly honest. And look, at the end of the day, I mean, I think Tobias probably shows the problem that the Prime Minister's got. He's battling to try and find a solution with all of these noises off, trying to knock him off track. But at the end of the day, the public are sick to the back teeth of this, and Tobias might not want the UK Parliament to make these decisions and instead rely on the European Court of Human Rights to make these decisions. But I'm pretty sure that the overwhelming majority of people in this country would want the UK Parliament to say, we're going to do what's right for the UK. And if that upsets the European Court of Human Rights, which frankly is largely a joke court anyway, so be it.
But doesn't Tobias have a point, though, Philip, about setting a dangerous precedent whereby we're putting too much power in the hands of a government to make such a decision? And you might be quite happy when it's a Conservative government, but those powers will remain in the hands of the Labour government, and then it might not be something that you'd be quite so keen on.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think that the Parliament makes these decisions. At the end of the day, if a Labour government has a majority in Parliament, it'll be able to make those decisions anyway. I think this is really important to have on the statute book, to say that actually the UK Parliament is going to be sovereign and is going to decide what is in the best interest of the UK. And if that upsets people at the European Court of Human Rights, I really couldn't care less.
Go on, Tobias.
I mean, there's so many things there. There's actually more that we agree with than disagree. My biggest concern is that this is becoming a defining manifesto commitment. We either get the flights and somehow, hooray, we've done it, or we don't. And I'm saddened about that because the list of success stories that we've had in tackling migration is now being overshadowed by this focus on Rwanda and the flights themselves. I go back and say Parliament has never legislated to make a country safe. It doesn't work that way. It has to be the courts that does that. And he dismisses the ECHR. That was crafted by Churchill. And if there is an international court that needs to be updating, many of these were the laws and international rules were created after the Second World War, then it's in Britain's interest to work with our partners to update them. Let's do it that way. If your car breaks down or has a problem, you don't throw it away and then buy another one. What you actually do is fix it. It needs fixing. I agree with Philip, absolutely with that. Some of these measures were written when the world was looking very, very different. But our world is getting more angry, it's getting more complicated, and we want people to actually uphold and honour international law. When Britain starts to breach it, rather than actually mending it, or drafting it, updating it, we're in a very, very dangerous place indeed. And I'm sorry, but we are overshadowing what Rishi Sunak has done. It's becoming such a distraction, and is actually, as it seems...
Tobias, I want to bring Philip Davis back in. Philip Davis, MP for Shipley. Philip, I'm just checking. Between September 2019 and March 2023, 1,600 refugees and asylum seekers were evacuated from Libya to Rwanda by the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. No less a body. So it can't be that unsafe, can it?
Exactly, absolutely. And the other thing, I mean, if Tobias had his way, by the sounds of it, prisoners would have the vote in the United Kingdom, because the European Court of Human Rights ruled that prisoners should have the vote. And the UK Parliament completely ignored that, and the UK government ignored that because he thought it was completely unfair. That was the UK using parliamentary sovereignty to say, actually, we disagree with the verdict of a European court. And that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying that we don't accept the decision of the European Court of Human Rights. And actually, other countries in the EU are actually following the UK's lead. They're looking at third countries now to send people to because they actually see that it is actually the right solution to this particular problem. We're actually leading the way. It's not that we're going against what other countries internationally. We're actually leading the way than they're following. The problem is that if people come to this country and they throw away their documentation and you've got no idea where they came from, the only solution, if you don't want to keep them in this country, which we don't, is to send them to a third country, because you can't return them to their original country because you don't know what the original country was. This is actually the only solution to that problem, and the UK Parliament has the absolute right to say, this is what we're going to do in the UK, irrespective of what a foreign court determines.
Tobias, what are you going to do next? What are the next stages in terms of this bill and the people who abstained, such as yourself? What happens next?
Well, I just need to come back and correct a couple of things there. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the concept. The Supreme Court made this very clear. With people being deported to another country, to have an arrangement. And yes, the United Nations has done it as well. And if there's a problem with the ECHR, let's repair it and fix it. Let's work with our intercontinental allies who are pursuing this as well. But as a deterrent, I'm saying, firstly, I don't think it'll actually work. Israel and Australia tried it, and without success. They've dropped these programs themselves. And it's overshadowing the good things that we're actually doing in these other areas that I began at the very front itself. I'm really sorry that this is now dominating the headlines. We're now discussing this as well, rather than the wider package of measures which actually are reaping dividends. We are seeing those numbers go down, tackling the criminal gangs, changing the legal migration rules, working with France as well, and getting those returns back with other countries where economic migrants are heading this way as well. If we can get deportations to another country which is legal, I'm more than happy to support that. But right now, the bill itself is getting tied up in complexities and is tearing our party apart. That is not a good look as we head towards the next general election.
Do you think it should just be ditched completely? If I could just ask you, both of you individually, Philip, would you want to see the bill just scrapped, the plan scrapped for Rwanda?
Absolutely not. Everybody agrees that this is the right solution.
Scrap it now?
You can't. Well, you have to caveat the answer to say that as the bill stands, my side of the party, like the One Nation groups, are very concerned about our status on the international stage, breaching international law. The other side of the argument is that this does not go far enough, that they're going to want to put amendments in to say, let's make it stronger. This is all about sovereignty. This is all about ditching the ECHR. So from that reason alone, if we can't get any form of compromise whatsoever, then yes, then drop the actual prospect of doing it for the moment, lean on the other activities that we're doing on the wider migration strategy, which I stress again are actually working. But we lost sight of all that because we're obsessed about getting one single flight flying to Rwanda.
OK, thank you, gentlemen. Really interesting. Tobias Ellwood there and Philip Davis.
I just want to say it's Philip Davis we're in the studio. It's not a great look for the Tory party, is it? Knocking spots off each other a few months for an election.
Well, look, the thing is, every political party, the main political parties, are broad churches. And that's a fact of the matter. And the fact is that in the Labour Party, they have people with a range of different opinions. In the Conservative Party, you have people with a range of different opinions. And that is not an unhealthy situation.
Yeah, sorry, we've got to move on, Philip. But and I also quite like the fact that you're having the honest debate about it. I love that. That's what politics is about. Right, moving on. The Bank of England are making their interest rate decision this afternoon at midday. In the last few moments, Rishi Sunak has been speaking to reporters.
Here at Wren Academy in Finchley, and that's because I think education is the best way we have to transform people's lives, something I'm very passionate about. In fact, the reason I got into politics. The great news is we're making real progress. Now almost 90% of schools are rated good or outstanding. We've got record numbers of teachers, and we saw just last week in the international league tables, the UK, England marching up those tables because of the reforms that we've made, which is very positive. We're building on that progress today, launching a consultation for something called the Advanced British Standard, which will be a new qualification that brings together technical and academic education, increases the amount of time children get in the classroom with great teachers, and make sure that everybody studies some maths and English, not A-level, but some maths and English up to 18, like every other country. We've got to make sure that our education system is world-class, that our children are being prepared for the jobs of the future, and that's what our reforms are going to do.
On the NHS now, ambulance service leaders are warning that winter delays are already putting patients at risk. How bad is it going to get?
Well, we know that winter is always a challenging time for the NHS, and that's why this year as Prime Minister I made sure that we started planning with the NHS for winter earlier than we've ever done it, and together with £1 billion of extra funding. Now that's going on things like expanding A&E departments, putting more ambulances on the road, and crucially discharge in the social care sector so that people can go back to their homes, back to their local communities once they've finished being in hospital, and we can free up that capacity to treat urgent patients. Now all of that is making a difference. We've seen considerable improvements since this time last year, but we obviously will keep a close eye on it and work very closely with the NHS to deliver everyone the care that they need.
We're expecting waiting list statistics today.
So we've got these interest rates decisions at midday today. Liam Halligan is here to tell us what to expect.
Well, the Bank of England meets 8 times a year to decide interest rates. Today is its last meeting of 2023. Obviously, we've had 14 interest rate rises, Bev, since December 2021. Blimey, all the way from 0.1%, those emergency levels post-lockdown, and we're now at 5.25%. Look, the smart money is that the Bank of England is going to hold interest rates at 5.25%. They've been there since August. But almost certainly the next move will be down. When will interest rates fall? The Bank of England itself thinks that won't happen until mid to late 2024. The futures markets, though, they're saying actually inflation's coming down more quickly than we thought. Wage data out earlier this week was lower growth than people thought. So there's a sense now that there's some momentum and interest rates will actually be cut sooner, maybe in the spring. And by the end of next year, the futures markets, people are placing bets that interest rates will be 4.25% by December 2024, as opposed to 5.25% now. That's a big difference.
After those rotten economic figures yesterday, where the economy went backwards, shouldn't they be cutting them today?
Well, some people would say that, but I don't think they will. The reason we had a GDP contraction yesterday is because when you raise interest rates, it takes a long time for those impacts to come through. Right. Those 14 rate rises, I'd say at least half the impact of that, the squeezing impact on the economy, on credit markets, on borrowing, on lending, has yet to come through. So even though interest rates are going to stay put, there's still lots of tightening in the tank. And to confuse these issues even more, we are at this turning point. Even though interest rates are likely to stay put today, mortgage rates, the commercial interest rates that you're offered when you try and borrow money to buy a home, they're coming down quite rapidly now. You're seeing big falls in mortgage rates because the mortgage providers are betting that when I say interest rates are going to drop sooner than the Bank of England thinks, that I'm right. And so that's why you're getting competition in the mortgage market suddenly, and that's why home loans are becoming cheaper. Good. So if you are coming off a fixed rate mortgage, stick with it for as long as you can, because borrowing costs are likely to get lower sooner.
We've run out of time, Liam. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment. We're going to talk about Gary Lineker and whether he's got a red card. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News forecast. A cloudy, damp start this morning, but it will brighten up from the northwest as we move through the day, and mild across western areas. And you can see that cloud and rain across England and Wales first thing. It slowly sinks its way southeastwards as we go through the day, allowing sunnier skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland to slowly push its way southwards. So a dry picture here. Still some blustery showers though across northwest Scotland, 1 or 2 of these heavy, but you can see the cloud holding on right through the day across the southeast. Cool here, 6 or 7 Celsius, but in the west rising to 11 or 12, so above average for the time of year with generally light winds, so it won't feel too bad in that sunshine. Into the evening time, turning quite chilly, and overnight we'll see some mist and fog patches forming across parts of England and Wales, and under the clearest skies perhaps a touch of frost. A little bit more of a breeze and cloud across the northern half of the UK will keep it frost-free here. 1 or 2 spots of light rain and drizzle, and still quite breezy here. 5 or 6 Celsius in the south, close to freezing in the countryside. Mist and fog patches slow to clear first thing, but then plenty of sunshine first thing across England and Wales. Just cloud amounts slowly increasing. Cloudier skies though across Northern Ireland and Scotland through Friday. An increasing risk of rain across the Highlands, pushing its way eastwards through the day. Some of this could be heavy at times. The wind staying quite blustery here, and a mild day generally for most. Still a little chilly across some eastern coasts. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Prime Minister may have staved off a potential rebellion from members of his Conservative Party over Rwanda, but what hurdles remain in the new year? We'll be explaining all of that on Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 14th of December. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Missing mum search. Police are appealing for help in their hunt for a Norwich mother of 3 who's been missing for 5 days. Our reporter, Theo Chikomba, has the latest.
It's coming up to 6 days now since the mother of 3 has been reported as missing here in Norwich. We'll have the latest.
And Rwanda rebels' headache. Rishi Sunak says that he's working tirelessly to get his Rwanda plan off the ground, despite opposition from Tory MPs.
Interest rates up or down or staying where they are? Rishi Sunak's pledge to grow the economy under intense scrutiny today. Our political editor Chris Hope joins us.
MPs wait for the results from the Bank of England because it could give us a real clue for the timing of the next general election.
And another story, Sainsbury's, Tesco's and lots of other supermarkets now are making a huge amount of money, millions, from your data in those very attractive loyalty schemes. And Gary Lineker.
Oh, and Gary Lineker. We're talking to a couple of BBC heavyweights about whether he can or can't survive the latest row over his inflammatory messages on social media. But that supermarket story, my little local Tesco's, you can see the huge difference in price if you have a loyalty card and if you don't. But I've never been tempted to have one.
No.
Well, I know they're flogging all your material all around the place.
The thing is that the price differences are so enormous now that it's almost not a choice. It could be 50% nearly off your shopping bill. As my mother says, there's no such thing as a free lunch,
she's
Beverly,
right.
and she's right. And it's quite literally the case, the truth in this case. Right, get in touch with us this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. First, though, here's your very latest news with Sophia Wensler.
Good morning, it's 1 minute past 10. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. Committee on Standards is recommending Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. An investigation was launched after the Blackpool South MP was filmed offering to leak confidential information to gambling industry chiefs. Mr Benton was secretly being filmed by reporters for The Times, who offered him between £2,000 and £4,000 for 2 days' work. The Parliamentary Committee has been looking into allegations that his actions caused significant damage to the reputation of the House. The Prime Minister prepares to double down for the next stage of the Rwanda bill as Tory MPs remain indecisive. Rishi Sunak's emergency legislation won a vote in the Commons only after 38 Tory MPs abstained. Some MPs call for the bill to be tightened, asking to deny asylum seekers individual appeals. But the government says it must remain within international law and assured concerned peers Rwanda will not take deportees who have no legal recourse to Strasbourg. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister says Labour prevents in stopping the boats.
Legal experts, former judges have all said that the legislation is incredibly strong, it is effective, it will work. The key now is to get it on the statute book so we can get the scheme up and running. The question really actually is for everyone who's trying to block that from happening, and first and foremost the Labour Party. Now, we're very clear we want to stop the boats, I want to tackle this problem. They're already down by a third, we've got more to do. The Conservative Party is united in wanting to stopping the boats. The Labour Party, to a person, voted against this legislation. So really the question for them is, why don't they want to stop the boats?
The UK has signed an international treaty with Japan and Italy to develop a new generation of stealth fighter jets. The deal will aim to build military planes with supersonic capability, including being able to provide 10,000 times more data than current systems. The headquarters for the Global Combat Air Programme will be based in the UK. The planes will take to the skies in 2035 and serve as a successor to the RAF Typhoon. It's the 6th day in the search for a missing woman who was last seen in Norwich city centre. Gaynor Lord was last spotted on CCTV cameras on Friday afternoon. Norfolk Constabulary says it is likely the 55-year-old may have entered the water and underwater search teams have scoured the river. Miss Lord's belongings, including clothing and a mobile phone, were found in a park near her workplace. Former Siemens UK boss will lead a Labour-backed review into how the delivery of major rail projects can be improved. Jürgen Mayer will oversee a panel of transport experts and investigate how infrastructure schemes can be completed better, faster and more cost-effectively. Labour say the review is necessary because many projects like HS2 have suffered severe difficulties and delays. Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Hay said Britain had immense potential but has been held back by 13 years of failure under the Conservatives. Troubled supplier Thames Water has named Chris Weston as its new CEO. Mr Weston is the former boss of power specialist Aggreko and will take on the post at the water firm from January. It's hoped he will help secure the company's financial future. It's after the UK's biggest water supplier has more than £1 billion of external debt, with the first £190 million due to be repaid in April next year. One person is unaccounted for and at least one building has been destroyed following an explosion in South Wales. A fire broke out at a two-storey building in Treforest Industrial Estate last night. 3 people were treated at the scene before being discharged. Emergency services are still at the scene and significant road closures remain in place in the area. A local tattoo studio has been destroyed by the fire, with the cause of the explosion still unknown. The Prime Minister says he wants the UK to have a world-class education system as the government launches a consultation on how to develop a new post-16 qualification. Parents, teachers and students are being asked to share their views on the Advanced British Standard, which will eventually replace A-levels and T-levels. Under new plans, students in England will typically study 5 subjects rather than 3. All pupils will also need to study some form of English and maths until the age of 18. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
You've been very busy at home, emailing us on gbviews@gbnews.com. A lot of you actually getting in touch about this supermarket story.
I thought you might.
These loyalty schemes, you'll have seen them at various supermarkets. You walk in and you notice the price is spectacularly different if you're a member of their loyalty card scheme. And Dulcia says, funnily enough, I was in Sainsbury's a few days ago. I don't usually shop there, it's not a store near me, and I was shocked by the difference in price if I had a Nectar card. As a result, I spent the entirety of my shop choosing items that were not impacted by the scheme, refusing to pay the considerable difference in price. That's one way of doing it, Dulcie. I like your style.
Yeah, and Joan says everyone knows that that these businesses share your data, and so do internet companies, and they don't seem to mind.
Jeff has said clearly something was being earned from these loyalty schemes somewhere, otherwise the savings would not be worth the time to pull the card out. I understand no personal details such as name and addresses are included in the sold data. With that being the case, I'm fine having my data sold. It's a reasonable trade-off in order to get the savings on each shop. The problem, though, for me, is that it is discriminatory. The differences in the prices are so enormous that if you're not part of their scheme, they've kind of got you over a barrel, haven't they?
Fascinating from Sue, who says, I save quite a bit when using my loyalty card, so I'm going to carry on. Everyone's data gets used all the time. I'm sure social media's at it too. Example, £6 off of a litre of gin. What's not to like? You know what? Maybe my objections to the loyalty card have evaporated. £6 off a bottle of gin, and then you get 2, and you've got a free bottle.
And the rest. There was one at Sainsbury's where a bottle of Baileys, and it is Christmas, was about £23 without your card, and something like £14 with the card. Like, it was spectacular savings on it. And is it a saving, or can you just sell us the products at the right price, please?
I bet you once they've wooed far more people over to the loyalty card, then the price differential will start to erode.
Exactly. So we'll always watch out for it. You're so right. David says, my Waitrose card has been one of the meanest of all, about £1 to £1.50 a week, and I get a free paper. But you have to use your phone as well as the card, so anyone not IT literate takes forever. So true. If the item is not exactly the same, a voucher will be rejected. I would vote Waitrose as being the scourge of Christmas.
You have to use your phone.
Yeah, so I have mine on my phone now.
I've never paid for anything on my phone.
Well, you don't have to pay for it on your phone, but if you don't want the plastic card in your wallet, you sign up to the loyalty scheme and then you open their app.
You've then got to find the app.
And then you
And that's why it takes so long in the queue, then.
That's why it takes... And that is a good point.
Yeah.
And because the savings are so enormous, I'm not saying I opt out of these, I don't, I'm in them. But I do object to feeling pretty manipulated. And then I do feel, especially, again, for elderly people who may not know how to sign up to a loyalty scheme, and they're going, well, I can buy my bottle of gin for £20, or I can have it for 10, but I don't know how to have it for 10. So...
Yeah. We were not going to repeat the suggestion that was made in our ear by our very helpful gallery. Certainly not going to repeat
We're not going to steal booze if it's
We are not going to steal booze.
Now,
the Bank of England is making its interest rate decision this afternoon at midday. In the last few minutes, Rishi Sunak has been speaking to reporters all about it.
Well, coming into this year, the first priority I set out was to halve inflation. You know why? Because it's inflation that's having an impact on people's budgets, the household cost of living that everyone is grappling with, but also because it's pushing up interest rates and mortgage rates. So I'm really pleased that we have halved inflation from close to 11% down to just over 4.5% in the most recent numbers. So that's real progress over this year. That's already making a difference, I hope, to many people's weekly shop, but also will mean that there's no more upward pressure, hopefully, on interest rates, and people can start looking forward to their mortgage rates coming down over time. That's really important, and that's why I've made a bunch of decisions, making sure that we don't borrow too much money, making sure that we're responsible with the public finances so that we can get inflation down. It doesn't happen by accident, and the contrast is quite clear. You've got the Labour Party saying they want to borrow £28 billion a year on this green spending spree. All that's going to do is push up people's taxes, push up mortgage rates. We want to get them down, and that's why in January we're starting to cut people's taxes as well. That will help put more money in people's pockets starting at the beginning of January. So look, I think we are making progress. There's more to do, but the economy has certainly turned a corner thanks to all the hard work this year.
So we're now going to go to Chris Hope, our political editor, to react on the back of the Prime Minister. Chris.
The PM there saying that the measures he's taking with the economy are slowly working. We're looking at this midday decision by the Bank of England because I think it will determine when the government's more likely to go to the country in the election next year. It's likely, as Liam Halligan was telling GBNews viewers earlier, they're going to hold interest rates at about 5.25%. And that will mean, I think, that the prospect of an early election early next year is less likely because they want to try and get the number down. I think the government wants to try and ride off the back of lower interest rates, 4.25%, possibly this time next year, and use the fact that the mortgage rates have fallen quite a lot since that chaotic time of Liz Truss's administration to try and get some help in the polls and show how the UK is taking the right choices, and they would say to voters, don't risk it with Labour. And that's why I think today's decision will go to a long way to deciding what Tory MPs want to do about the election. I think the vote on Tuesday, this huge vote on the small boats, while obviously ostensibly about small boats policy, was also about trying to shore up Rishi Sunak. Tory MPs don't want an election early. They know that had they defeated the PM on Tuesday, we'll be facing a no-confidence vote in Parliament today, and that could have jeopardised and forced Sunak to go to the country in February. That was the bubbling undercurrent below the vote on Tuesday. Let's not ruin it for Sunak. Have an election where we're 20 points behind the polls. Let's try and stick it out for most of next year and then go to the country. And therefore, you have to support the PM, even though you may not want to, on parts of that Rwanda plan, which not everyone thinks will work.
Another headache for Rishi Sunak this morning, Christopher, in the shape of Scott Benton, the MP for Blackpool. Just bring our viewers up to speed with what's happened to him.
Yeah, very briefly, Scott Benton, MP for Blackpool South, 36, elected in 2019 with a majority of 3,690. Clearly a red wall seat that was won really on the leadership of Boris Johnson. He has been found today by an independent inquiry in House of Commons to have breached lobbying rules. He's been given a 35-day suspension from the Commons. That's 3 times more than required to trigger a recall by-election. He declined to say there was no wrongdoing. The inquiry was into an investigation by the Times newspaper when the accusation was that he'd offered to lobby for a fake gambling company. This is a disaster for Mr. Sunak. It's another probably unwanted by-election in an election year. He's already facing a probable by-election in Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, a very safe seat held by Peter Bone with a 19,000 majority. And then we are now looking at probably a recall by-election. If more than 10% of voters want it within a 6-week period, there will be a by-election. That'll be a red wall test for Sunak, probably in around April or May time, in what will be a very, very tense year. All these by-elections are racking up the defeats we saw this year in Selby and Anstey and others. I mean, there's a drumbeat here of by-election defeats. It looks like more becoming their way. I mean, to be fair to Scott Benton, with a majority of just over 3,500, he may not have been expecting to hold that seat at the next general election. But what Sunak doesn't want is probably that to be highlighted as a failure in the red wall so near to probably a big general election. And that looks like what may be coming down the track for Rishi Sunak.
OK.
Chris Hope,
Thanks
for
Chris.
joining. Madeline Grant's with us. Do you get the sense, Madeline, this is a government that's falling apart?
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? I mean, I think I wouldn't say it's completely falling apart in a kind of sort of explosive sense. It's more like managed decline, things just getting successively worse. And as Christopher Hope pointed out so well there, it's that kind of trickle of bad news every so often. It just dampens the morale. And you hear more and more MPs who decide that even if they have what would normally be quite a safe majority of, say, 10,000, that they're not going to risk it again and they're going to step down at the next general election. It has this dampening effect on morale, but equally, in a way, that sense of general despair has actually slightly played into Rishi Sunak's hands in a way, because even the most anti-Sunakian MP knows that this is their last chance and they can't start rolling the dice again and having another Tory leadership race.
Part of the problem as well, I think, in imposing discipline on the party is the fact that so many MPs, Madeline, are standing down next time. Yes. So what power do the whips who are in charge of discipline, what power do they have over them? They can't say, you'll be a backbencher the rest of your life. They're standing there. I mean, I suppose they can say, we'll get you a knighthood, old boy, when you go. But it's not so easy now.
That's a very good point. And another thing I've seen a bit recently was the MP for Northampton, I think. Is it Northampton? Peterborough, sorry, it's Peterborough. He stepped down because many of his constituents disagreed with the government's position on Israel-Gaza from a junior ministerial position.
Yeah.
That suggests to me there is someone who actually cares much more about being in the constituency and campaigning for the next general election. So there are quite a few people that actually wouldn't want to be ministers right now because it would take away time and energy that they need to ensure their survival, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a marginal seat, you don't want to be in Westminster.
Yeah.
You've got to be in the constituency morning, noon and night.
What does all of this tell us about when a general election might be? It feels like one week will come on and we think it's May, and the next week it's felt more like October, and then more recently they're starting to think before the summer.
I've been a May man for quite a while.
There may not be enough good news by May, surely.
But I think if he hasn't fixed the boats, and it doesn't look like he's going to, even though he's giving it his best effort, the idea of hundreds of boats crossing the Channel every week, if it's a mild summer,
in the summer,
would be catastrophic.
That's a very good point. And also that they will try to, in the budget in the spring, there will probably be some kind of good news.
Yeah.
And then they will use that to kind of bounce into the general election with a bit of high morale. I used to be of that opinion, but equally, I still think there are many MPs who believe that the government, there's something they can do to turn all this around. There might be some lever they haven't pulled yet, or a switch that can be pressed. I mean, I'm not sure what that is, but I still think there is this slightly kind of Micawber-ish feeling that things might just get better, and things will turn around.
And maybe it's a case of also waiting for Labour to slip up spectacularly, because at the moment they're just playing with a very straight bat and being very quiet most of the time, aren't they? And not making any. Don't have to do anything, just have to not lose.
Yeah, and actually, such is the level of dysfunction in the Conservative Party that Labour are being allowed to say things that are genuinely totally shameless. Like, I almost sort of gasped a couple of weeks ago in the chamber when Keir Starmer said to Rishi Sunak, like, how's that going on the migration policy? And I just thought, oh my God, we've got Labour now getting to
and this used to be a Tory strong card.
Absolutely.
Tough on immigration.
And quite a lot of the, for example, the Human Rights Act, it's quite a lot of, and also just initially having that level of mass migration that was unheard of before the 90s. That was Blair era stuff. They don't really have a leg, or they shouldn't have a leg to stand on, but that is the way that such is the Conservative management of this issue, that they're actually being outflanked by the Free Movement Party, basically.
I've seen your writing recently a little bit about the COVID inquiry, and of course that shadow lingers over this government as well. Do you think it's going to make any bearing on how people feel about what happened in the last 3 years when it comes to an election, or people are entrenched in how they feel that was handled, maybe?
That's a really interesting question. I'm not sure that it will make that much difference, because I don't know how much sort of ordinary voters are aware of the COVID inquiry as it trundles on. I mean, obviously, every so often they have someone, a big name like Boris Johnson or the Prime Minister, appearing in front of it, and then there's a great deal of media interest, but then you go into another module, let's say, and it becomes more technical, people start to switch off a bit. I mean, frankly, I'm sure we agree on
we have a lot in common when it comes to our view of lockdown. But I'm sure most people still believe that it was the right thing to do. And actually, part of the reason that Rishi Sunak, when he came in, was polling so much higher than his party was that he was associated with furlough, and people credited him personally with, you know, saving their businesses.
Yeah.
And people have so far not really made the connection between the state of the economy right now, the state of the NHS waiting lists. I think the government gets blamed for the dysfunction, not the lockdown decisions, and not the legacy of lockdown, if that makes sense.
People have short memories.
Yeah, and of course, also the Labour Party get away with it again too, because they were even more evangelical about lockdowns than the Tories. They wanted it sooner and longer.
Yeah, I mean, they do. And this is just part of politics, that whoever's in charge gets the blame for it. I mean, there's no way that Gordon Brown was not responsible for the financial crash of 2008, but they still got punished for it. You know, sometimes them's the breaks, as Boris said.
Yeah.
You know.
And even now, Labour are still not calling for the COVID inquiry to be a shape, a different format, different costing, not to have limits on it. And I presume if they come in, they can't really change it now anyway, because all the terms of references are decided for the next few. Like you say, we'd sit tortuously through it for the next 3 years.
It really feels like the shape of the questions are arriving at a predetermined conclusion that we didn't lock down early enough, we didn't lock down hard enough, and then actually so many lives could have been saved if only they had listened and locked down earlier at the beginning. And there's actually lots of evidence that, you know, that would have simply been deferring this mortality. And the data from Sweden shows that now, if you're looking at all excess deaths, they are right at the bottom of the league table in terms of excess mortality, taken as a whole, suggesting that they were definitely onto something. These kinds of issues are just not even being answered.
Not even being asked, are they?
Yeah.
Madeline Grant of the Daily Telegraph, great to see you. Right, still to come this morning, is Gary Lineker finally going to get a red card from the BBC Director General, Tim Davie? Well, perhaps, now that there's a new chairman of the BBC. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new
Yes, I
teeth.
know.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Now, pressure is growing on the BBC to take action and finally remove Gary Lineker from their presenting lineup after repeatedly making political posts on social media.
So we're joined now by former BBC presenter Roger Bolton and the former BBC journalist and royal correspondent Michael Cole. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Roger, if we could go to you first. He appears to have, Lineker, gone too far, according to the new chairman of the BBC, Samir Shah, because he criticised personally a member of Parliament. Is that a fair assessment of why he could be in difficulties now?
I think that's right, although the BBC's own media editor, when these latest guidelines were introduced, said they were as clear as mud. I mean, there's a question of whether you think they crossed the guidelines and whether they can be proven clearly in a legal context to have done so. But I think he has. The incoming chairman thinks he has. Although the incoming chairman, if he's approved by Parliament, Samir Shah, did say it's a question of how egregious it is. But the plain fact is, if you're focused on the future of the BBC, like the Director General, you're faced with the pressures you've got under, the cuts that have just been made effectively, large cuts in BBC spending, with all the other problems you're faced in the Middle East. The last thing in the world you want is this story running and running and running. And if Gary, you know, had really put the BBC and public service broadcasting first, he would have shut up. But he clearly won't. I mean, he believes these things genuinely. He's a genuine guy, but this is crazy.
Let's have a look at one of his tweets. This is one of the many tweets that Gary Lineker has sent out now on X. The quote here, there's 4 pictures of Grant Shapps. It says, a bit rich coming from someone who can't even stick to one name, 4 chaps Shapps. And so he's suggesting that Grant Shapps has 4 different identities. I don't know whether that's true or not. The tweet that I saw... Go on, Roger.
No, what he's referring to there is the fact that in his previous business dealings, Mr. Shapps used 3 names which were not his own. Now, you can either say that's innocuous or whatever, but that is a reference to the fact that Mr. Shapps, as a result of Mr. Shapps using these 3 names, people may have thought there were 3 real people behind it. In fact, only Mr. Shapps was behind it. But the point about that is that, you know, this is pretty much an attack on an individual, which I think the guidelines say.
Yeah, and that's where I think. And also the other one was Jonathan Gullis MP, who basically tweeted to say that Gary Lineker, another breach of the BBC's impartiality rules. Sadly, spineless Tim Davie will do nothing about it, having surrendered to Lineker previously. And Gary Lineker retweeted that, Michael Cole, and he said, Jonathan hasn't read the new guidelines, or should I say, had someone read them to him. They're just sort of childish, insulting spats, aren't they? And of course, the BBC's social media rules. Just to bottom this out, Michael, as to what he might have done, the BBC social media rules say you are not allowed to criticise the character of individual politicians in the UK. That's precisely what he did do, Michael.
Good morning, Beverly. Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Roger. The BBC needs to get a grip. It has adopted a completely craven posture in the face of Mr. Lineker, now and before. Quite clearly, he has transcended the guidelines by making personal attacks on MPs. And it's more than that. He is the highest paid person at the BBC, on the screen or anywhere else. And that comes with it a responsibility to act in a way that does not compromise the BBC's political neutrality, because without that, its reasons for being cease to exist. It's quite abject the way the BBC has behaved in this situation. They should take action. They made Gary Lineker. He was a loquacious footballer. They made him into a star. In the old days, when Roger was there, they used to make stars. If you didn't, people moved on. You
Go
got
on.
somebody else.
Go on, Roger Bolton. Let's bring you in. 1 second, Michael.
Well, Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to be honest, Gary Lineker made himself a star by being the most wonderful footballer who could score the most fabulous goals, and also is an excellent presenter, and he does work. Look, for other channels, there's a real principle here, which is the collision of principles, isn't there? There's the freedom of speech, the right to freedom of speech, which you champion properly and you use on your programme. And then there's the obligation of the BBC to be impartial. And there's no difficulty with news and current affairs. The rules are very clear. You don't comment. If you do in this way, you're out. That's the way it should be.
Here's the bit, Roger, just help me understand this. Is Gary Lineker worth the stress to the BBC and the money? All he is now is a footballer from many years ago who can read a piece to camera and have a little chat about football. It's not that complicated, Roger. What does he still bring to the channel?
Oh, well, Beverly, you say anybody could do your job?
Anyone could do this job. Oh, I tell you what.
Listen, Roger, I'm offering Stuart for a third of the money.
But why him? But I mean, listen, the Premier League comes through dozens, hundreds of footballers every year. There's got to be someone.
Let me answer your question. There's a separate question about whether he's paid too much. I agree with you, he is. But in terms of his abilities, he's a brilliant footballer. He really understands football. He's a very good analyst. He's charming, and he's a very excellent presenter. He must be one of the best presenters. Now, I still don't think he's worth the money, but that's why he's in the job. And do you want the best presenters on the BBC? On the whole, you do. But there's a price, and the price is too high in terms of what he's paid, and the price is too high now in what he's saying on air. So I think it's unfortunate in the case that he and the BBC will have to part. Now, I think it's sad, and I say Gary's genuine in his beliefs, but he's actually, I think, let the BBC down.
Yeah. Michael, just last quick word to you, Michael Cole. He's just acts with impunity. How much longer can he carry on?
Well, it depends whether the BBC has got any backbone, whether Samir Shah is confirmed as the chairman. He seems to have a dim view of all this. You know, the BBC used to make its own stars and it used to act accordingly. If Gary Lineker has political views, there's always Speaker's Corner. He can buy a placard, he can take part in a demonstration, but he mustn't use the prestige of the BBC to forward his political views. It's quite as simple as that. If I can just say very, very briefly, I worked for the BBC for 20 years, more than a fifth of its existence. I filed thousands of reports, thousands, and I never expressed one political opinion or a personal opinion. And in all that time...
But you work in news and current affairs, and that's the distinction I don't accept. Gary does not, which makes it more difficult.
Roger, and I was the most I was ever paid in a year, 1987, was £47,000. I believed in what I was doing.
Okay.
I was beaten up in Belfast.
That's a lot.
I was fired at.
Okay.
Gentlemen.
Right.
Gentlemen. Round three another time.
Yeah.
Another time, gentlemen.
We can't go into overtime. We've already gone into overtime. We can't have a penalty shoot-off as well. Thanks so much, Roger Bolton.
And Michael Cole. Very fine debate.
Right, still to come this morning, missing Norwich mum. The search for the mother of three, Gaynor Lord, resumes this morning. She's been missing for 5 days. We'll bring you any news about that very sad story. It must be extremely stressful for the family. First, though, your morning's news with Sophia Wensler.
That was good debate.
Thank you, Bev. It's 10:33. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have pleaded not guilty to her murder. The 10-year-old's body was discovered at her home in Surrey in August. The day before Sarah was discovered, the 3 defendants left the UK for Pakistan with 5 children before returning a month later. All 3 are due to appear at the Old Bailey ahead of a trial in September next year. Committee on Standards is recommending Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. An investigation was launched after the Blackpool South MP was filmed offering to leak confidential information to gambling industry chiefs. Mr Benton was secretly being filmed by reporters for The Times, who offered him between £2,000 and £4,000 for 2 days' work. The Parliamentary Committee has been looking into allegations that his actions caused significant damage to the reputation of the House. The Prime Minister prepares to double down for the next stage of the Rwanda bill as Tory MPs remain indecisive. Rishi Sunak's emergency legislation won a vote in the Commons only after 38 Tory MPs abstained. Some MPs call for the bill to be tightened, asking to deny asylum seekers individual appeals. But the government says it must remain within international law and assured concerned peers Rwanda will not take deportees who have no legal recourse to Strasbourg. You can get more on all those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2666 and 1.1617 euros. The price of gold is £1,605 and 94 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,686 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Still to come this morning, not stopping the boats. What percentage do you think of migrants who've arrived on boats have been removed from the UK? You don't want to go anywhere. You don't want to miss this. It's Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free. GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10:40, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, and now we're talking about the missing mum, mother of three, whose belongings were discovered in various locations. She's Gaynor Lord, who went missing near the River Wenton in Norwich on Friday afternoon.
That's right. It was about 2:35. It's prompted a huge search by police, divers, fire crews and also the Coast Guard. We're joined live now in Norwich by our national reporter, Theo Chicombo. Good morning, Theo. It's got eerie echoes of the Nicola Bulley story, of course, this. What are you hearing there on the ground in Norwich?
Yes, well, a very good morning to you. So in the last hour or so, we've seen some of those specialist dive team colleagues arrive back on the scene here at Wenson Park in Norwich. Now, we understand that the police were able to find some of those items last week, and indeed a member of the public also alerted the police after having seen some of those items in this area. So just over my right shoulder, there is a white tent just over there, and the specialist teams have just begun to arrive, and they were here into the evening yesterday working into the water. There's searches in the water and on the land just over my left shoulder. Some officers have been here in the last hour or so going through some of the rubble which is just behind me next to the water. But in terms of the investigation, we understand that Norfolk police are also in conversation with Lancashire police. Particularly, we saw that case earlier this year with Nicola Bulley, who was missing for several weeks, and they are looking to learn some lessons from that incident which took place earlier this year. But here, though, they are working with Lincolnshire police as well. Some specialist officers have come to assist them as part of their investigation. Now, of course, yesterday we saw that CCTV footage of Gaynor Lord after having left work just after 2 p.m, just over an hour before she was due to finish her shift, and she was seen rushing through town, and of course it's raised more questions as to why that is the case. And then of course she was last seen in this area, but at the moment it's not quite clear what has happened. The police are still working on that working hypothesis that she may be in the water, and they're continuing to search this area to establish what has happened.
OK,
right.
Thank you, Theo. Theo Chicombo.
Yeah, we've got in studio with us is Karen Malone and Sam Lister, poll head of The Express, and Karen Malone, writer and broadcaster. Karen, it's right, there are echoes here of Nicola Bulley, aren't there?
It's chilling, it's absolutely chilling. And what your report didn't say there was that, you know, she came out of work at 2:44 and seemed perfectly happy. But then she was seen running through the grounds of the cathedral. And the thought is that she may have met someone and talked to someone in there, because when she left work, she was smiling. When she emerged from the grounds of the cathedral, she was not. She looked distressed. And then she wasn't seen, and she was running. And then she wasn't seen after that. Now, they have found some of her clothes in a pile. They found her phone. They found her handbag. All chilling echoes again of Nicola Bulley, because they found her phone on a bench now near where she'd been sitting. But it just seems incredible, doesn't it, in this day and age, that you can just disappear off the face of the earth. With all the cameras that we have, all the CCTV everywhere, how can you just disappear off the face of the earth? And what the hell happened between 2:44 and 4 o'clock?
And the police are saying if anybody saw her in the cathedral grounds, if they could come forward, because they're obviously concerned about what went on in those grounds.
And you know what worries me as well? The cops that are handling this are the same cops that handled the Nicola Bulley case. And the superintendent is saying, you know, we are aware of the report. We're aware of the lessons that, you know, we have learned. Well, let's hope they are. Let's hope they find...
She's rushing, Sam. I mean, she nearly gets hit by cars there, doesn't she? There's something has clearly alerted her to get across there.
Almost as if she's running from something or someone.
Yeah. I mean, clearly it's all incredibly worrying and tragic, and I think the important thing is to learn the lessons from the Nicola Bulley case, though, isn't it? That we know that the police handled that badly. They've been criticised for that. And obviously we would hope that the police in this scenario would respect the privacy of the family, respect, you know, what we don't want to see is erroneous facts being put out.
Running commentary on the fact that she was allegedly drank too much or had mental health issues, which was terribly unfortunate for the family to have to read all that.
Absolutely. So I hope the police have. I know they have been in contact, haven't they, with Lancashire Police to find out. You know, lessons on how to handle this case. But it is a sort of case that people are interested because you look at that footage and people do want to know, like, how can you disappear? There are so many cameras. People can't understand how you can be here and then there's just no trace. So I think
of course, Sam, it doesn't matter what time of year these things happen, but when it happens close to Christmas, it all seems all the more poignant.
Exactly,
because it's a time for family.
We're counting down, aren't we, all the time every day?
And she's got daughters. There are daughters.
And
3 kids. Who
very
are
strange.
Desperate for them.
And that makes you think something hellish has happened because no mum is going to walk away from 3 kids at any time of the year.
Very rare. No.
So it is worrying in the extreme. But
now,
go on.
I was just going to say, before the break, I did ask our audience what percentage of boats they thought would be removed, the percentage of people on the small boats would be removed from Britain. Carol, what is the enormous percentage?
1%! I mean, it is astonishing, is it not? 1%.
It's terrible.
You know, of the 118,000 or something that have come since 2018 or 20, I can't remember. Only 1% of that accounts for 1,182 migrants have been removed.
But they've probably come back already.
Well, they probably have, and that's what they do. But you know, this will further. I mean, we're probably going to talk about it after the break. But this will further inflame the right that allowed Rishi's bill to go through by a whisker this week by 44 votes. Saying that the policy had to toughen up. Well, this will make them say you've got to toughen up even more. It's astonishing.
And I know, Sam, a lot of people argue. We had Tobias Elwood on earlier saying it's distracting from the other issues and distracting from the number of people coming here legally, which we know is well over 1 million, because we only get the net figure. But this shows they've really got to do something. Because it just shows a weak, knock-kneed government that can't stop these people coming and then can't flip and get rid of them.
And can't deport people. And also, the numbers of Albanians who were actually deported were staggeringly low. And obviously we have this agreement with Albania.
Well, they keep going on about how successful it's been.
Yeah, and Albania is obviously a safe country. It's, you know, they're part of Europe. So that is, it shows how difficult it is to actually do this. But also, I think the bigger issue is it's the Home Office. The Home Office... for decades has been unfit for purpose. We know this under Labour.
John Reid said it in 2006 when he was Labour Home Secretary. This department is not fit for purpose. Never has been since.
No, and they split it into 2 departments: Ministry of Justice to take care of the courts, the prisons, and all that side of it. And that was supposed to make it a viable department. It never has been. It clearly cannot. It cannot carry out the basic functions it's supposed to do.
It seems to be worse than that, Sam. It seems to be actually actively stopping people from being deported. You know, how can it take 18 months to process one application? It's beyond stupid. And you were talking about the number of Albanians there. Only 420 have been returned. I mean, this has never been here in the blood.
So do you think they've been misleading us about this? Because they've been telling us what a great success the returns policy has been, sending record numbers back. 400, nothing.
It's absolutely trash. And, you know, this just shows that if anything shows we have to do something now, this is it, that because we have totally lost control of our borders. You know, we are so... You know, the rest of Europe now is actually... I was thinking the other day, Labour and some of the Tory party are so far behind in immigration policy. They're so out of touch with what Europe thinks. You know, they think Europe is the big I am and they're, you know, they're kind of migrants. They're not. Almost every country in Europe is now trying to get a Rwanda policy in place. Italy already has. It's got to deal with Albania. You know, Germany has got to... Every I think it was Matthew Goodwin did a great piece today in The Sun. Every country that has a pro-national party saying control immigration is soaring in the polls. Because Europe is sick to the back teeth. So, you know, something's got to be done, or there's going to be anarchy. There just is.
And the Prime Minister's off to see the Italian Prime Minister at the weekend. She's incredibly hardline.
Very hard line, and it's interesting that she seems to be his biggest pal in Europe. And we asked Number 10 about this yesterday. Why is he so close to Giorgia Meloni? And Number 10 say it's because they've got very similar views on tackling this issue, that it is crucial for both of them.
He might have similar views to it, but he's not doing much about it. He is trying with Rwanda.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to him, I think he is absolutely committed to getting the Rwanda policy off the ground, getting a flight off the ground, because he knows how important that is to voters. That is symbolic, and unless he delivers that, he's really in trouble.
Toast.
But don't you think, Simon, you guys have seen it this week in Parliament, that I fear for the future of the Tory party in this. This is one of the greatest democratic parties in history. It's been around since the 1700s. And it's going to be torn apart. It's tearing itself apart over one policy that probably isn't going to work. I mean, God, I want it to work, but it probably isn't going to work in its current form. And they're tearing themselves apart a year before an election. What the hell is going to happen?
Do you know what astonished me this week? Because I've spent a lot of time talking to lots of different MPs on different bits of the party, and obviously the right itself is split into five families. Some of those are absolutely intent on destroying the other wing of the party.
It's incredible.
They're not, and I say, do you not forget that you're actually supposed to be taking the fight to Labour? They're not bothered, they're fighting each other. I mean, it's astonishing.
That's what's so maddening. And to see at Prime Minister's questions yesterday, Rishi Sunak being taunted and teased and mocked by Keir Starmer, who's got no flipping policy on immigration at all. This used to be the great, strong issue for the Tories.
You know what Starmer's policy is? Oh, let's smash the gangs. Like, no one's ever thought of that. And does he really imagine if he gets some of the gangs, it's going to stop people wanting to come? They're not coming because they're fleeing persecution. They're coming because they're fleeing poverty.
We've got to keep telling people, if you vote Labour, fine. You're going to let even more people in.
Right, let's talk about Gary Lineker, shall we? Are his days numbered?
This is going to be a very positive, constructive conversation here. I think there might be 4 agreements here.
I think very possibly.
I mean, look, the chances are that the BBC's new chairman incoming, Sami Shah, might be the one to say enough and have a word with Tim Davie and say, Gary Lineker is not worth the aggro.
I mean, he's clearly frustrated. He's not even started in the job yet. He's already frustrated by this man. We've got Grant Shapps on the front of our paper today, exclusive. He's saying that people would welcome a period of silence from Gary over Christmas. I think what strikes me is this is all about Gary Lineker. It's all about his own profile. If he cared about the BBC so much, he would not keep making these fights. All he does is put the BBC and the licence fee back into the middle of the discussion, back on the front pages, back on...
He's not hurting the Tories, he's actually hurting the BBC. You know, and I feel like the tide might be turning. There was a former BBC director called Danny Cohen. He called for him to be sacked, and he said he's like a footballer with an out-of-control ego. He said he's behaving like he's much bigger than his club, in this case the BBC, with his insolent inference. He said there's like Tim Davie, the Director General, he said can't or won't do anything to stop him. So I think the tide is turning. I think the guns are gathering against him. And when this guy, Sami Shah, gets in, I think he's already said he disagrees with what Lineker was actually saying about the Rwanda policy and about stopping the boats. But what he's really upset about is the fact he's insulting MPs. I mean, who was the guy he said he suggested he couldn't read?
Jonathan Gallis.
Suggested he couldn't read.
How dare he?
I mean, it's just...
But also, a lot of people watching this and thinking, why am I paying my licence fee, which is 170 quid nearly, to listen to him pontificating politically?
And I think a lot of people on the other side say, well, look, he's a football presenter. He's not presenting the 6 o'clock news. He's allowed to say what he wants. But then I think you have to think, what if Claudia Winkleman was saying, let's deport people to Rwanda? Would the left be happy about that? I'm not sure they would. Or,
they'd be marching on Broadcasting House.
So if you flip it and you do it on the other side, I'm not sure these people would be making the same argument.
Do you think he's just trying to get sacked and go down in a blaze of glory, Carol?
No,
he could work for an international sports channel and get 3 times the amount he gets from the BBC.
But the BBC, he thinks there's kudos being attached to the BBC. And no, I don't think he wants to be sacked at all. I know he's on 1.3 million, but he still gets a load of money from Walkers, for working for other channels. He's pointing in millions every year. But I really do think he's a danger now to the BBC. You know, their what's the word? Their charter, the Royal Charter, demands impartiality, and it's clear that he is not impartial. And
we need to move on.
Go on.
Right. Right, don't go anywhere. After the break, we're going to be joined by Tory rebel Tom Hunt, who abstained from the Rwanda legislation vote. We'll ask him if he's got any plans to, the word you used yesterday?
Marmalise the bill.
Marmalise the bill in the new year. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest GB News forecast. A cloudy, damp start this morning, but it will brighten up from the northwest as we move through the day and mild across western areas. And you can see that cloud and rain across England and Wales. First thing, it slowly sinks its way southeastwards as we go through the day, allowing sunnier skies across Northern Ireland and Scotland to slowly push its way southwards. So a dry picture here. Still some blustery showers, though, across northwest Scotland, one or two of these heavy. But you can see the cloud holding on right through the day across the southeast. Cool here, 6 or 7 Celsius, but in the west, rising to 11 or 12, so above average for the time of year with generally light winds, so it won't feel too bad in that sunshine. Into the evening time, turning quite chilly, and overnight we'll see some mist and fog patches forming across parts of England and Wales, and under the clearest skies, perhaps a touch of frost. A little bit more of a breeze and cloud across the northern half of the UK will keep it frost-free here. 1 or 2 spots of light rain and drizzle, and still quite breezy here. 5 or 6 Celsius in the south, close to freezing in the countryside. Mist and fog patches slow to clear first thing, but then plenty of sunshine first thing across England and Wales. Just cloud amounts slowly increasing. Cloudier skies, though, across Northern Ireland and Scotland through Friday. An increasing risk of rain across the Highlands, pushing its way eastwards through the day. Some of this could be heavy at times. The wind staying quite blustery here and a mild day generally for most. Still a little chilly across some eastern coasts. See you soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new
It's
teeth.
your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Wednesday the 14th of December. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Andrew Pearce, and Bev Turner.
Interest rates decision. Rishi Sunak's pledge to grow the economy is under scrutiny. Our political editor Christopher Hope has the very latest.
All eyes on midday for the interest rate decision and what it might mean for the timing of the next general election.
And the missing mum search. Police are appealing for help in their hunt for a Norwich mother of three who's not been sighted for 5 days. We'll bring you any updates as soon as they happen.
Rwanda rebels' headache. Rishi Sunak says he's working tirelessly to get his Rwanda plan off the ground, despite opposition from Tory MPs. We're going to be talking to one of those MPs in just a moment.
And another story that's got you talking, it certainly has. Sainsbury's and Tesco's make £300 million from your private data if you sign up to those loyalty card schemes.
And now you might say, well, that's okay. Like, I know what I'm signing up to, but do you really know what you're signing up to? I think the bit that bothers me is the price differences now. Massive price differences in the shops. You'll have seen it. We're all, you know, our eyes are watering, aren't we, doing the Christmas shopping, with how expensive everything is.
But I just know they'll suck you in with the lower prices, and after 6 months, the difference will be eroded.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You know what they're like.
Let us know your thoughts this morning. You've certainly been very busy on our emails about that story. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. First, though, the very latest news from Sophia Wensler.
Thank you, Bev. Good morning. It's 1 minute past 11. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have pleaded not guilty to her murder. The 10-year-old's body was discovered at her home in Surrey in August. The day before Sarah was discovered, the 3 defendants left the UK for Pakistan with 5 children before returning a month later. The trial of all 3 will be in September next year. Committee on Standards is recommending Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. An investigation was launched after the Blackpool South MP was filmed offering to leak confidential information to gambling industry chiefs. Mr Benton was secretly being filmed by reporters for The Times, who offered him between £2,000 and £4,000 for 2 days' work. The Parliamentary Committee has been looking into the allegations that his actions caused significant damage to the reputation of the House. The Prime Minister prepares to double down for the next stage of the Rwanda bill as Tory MPs remain indecisive. Rishi Sunak's emergency legislation won a vote in the Commons only after 38 Tory MPs abstained. Some MPs call for the bill to be tightened, asking to deny asylum seekers individual appeals. But the government says it must remain within international law and assured concerned peers Rwanda will not take deportees who have no legal recourse to Strasbourg. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister accuses Labour of sabotaging his bill.
Legal experts, former judges have all said that the legislation is incredibly strong. It is effective. It will work. The key now is to get it on the statute book so we can get the scheme up and running. The question really actually is for everyone who's trying to block that from happening, and first and foremost the Labour Party. Like, we're very clear we want to stop the boats. I want to tackle this problem. They're already down by a third. We've got more to do. You know, the Conservative Party is united in wanting to stopping the boats. The Labour Party, to a person, voted against this legislation. So really the question for them is, why don't they want to stop the boats?
The UK has signed an international treaty with Japan and Italy to develop a new generation of stealth fighter jets. The deal will aim to build military planes with supersonic capability, including being able to provide 10,000 times more data than current systems. The headquarters for the Global Combat Air Programme will be based in the UK. The planes will take to the skies in 2035 and serve as a successor to the RAF Typhoon Defence. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps says the UK is deeply invested in global security.
Really important time for the UK and Japan to work closer together. The world is much more contested now, and we're seeing that with various different conflicts. But it's important that with a conflict in Europe and a conflict in the Middle East, that we don't forget that the Indo-Pacific also needs protection as well. And the United Kingdom takes those responsibilities incredibly seriously.
It's the 6th day in the search for a missing woman who was last seen in Norwich city centre. Gaynor Lord was last spotted on CCTV cameras on Friday afternoon. Norfolk Constabulary says it is likely the 55-year-old may have entered the water, and underwater search teams have scoured the river. Miss Lord's belongings, including clothing and a mobile phone, were found in a park near her workplace. Former Siemens UK boss will lead a Labour-backed review into how the delivery of major rail projects can be improved. Jürgen Mayer will oversee a panel of transport experts and investigate how infrastructure schemes can be completed better, faster and more cost-effectively. Labour say the review is necessary because many projects like HS2 have suffered severe difficulties and delays. Shadow Transport Secretary Louise Hay said Britain had immense potential but has been held back by 13 years of failure under the Conservatives. Troubled supplier Thames Water has named Chris Weston as its new CEO. Mr Weston is the former boss of power specialist Aggreko and will take on the post at the water firm from January. It's hoped he will help secure the company's financial future. It's after the UK's biggest water supplier has more than £1 billion of external debt, with the first £190 million due to be repaid in April next year. This is GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on your digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning. It's 11:06 on Thursday morning. This is my last Britain's Newsroom before Christmas, Andrew. I hate to tell you that.
She's been spending so much time choosing my Christmas present, but you know what? She forgot to bring it.
He's devastated. I'm actually going to be back on New Year's Day morning. Where will you be? Sleeping off your hangover somewhere.
Sleeping off my hangover, for certain.
What have you been saying at home? That's what's more important. Right, Barbara has said the BBC are unbelievable. They're squandering our money. They seem to be afraid of the so-called stars like Lineker. They appall me. I could not pay for the BBC. If I could not pay for the BBC, I would be glad I watched so little.
Yeah, and they said, Audrey says they say there's no such thing as bad publicity while people debate back and forth. Gary Lineker keeps airtime in the news and he's laughing all the way to the bank.
And John says the BBC don't need him or anyone presenting their programme with his stupid jokes and opinions. You can come here for those. Run the programme with more actual football and save millions of taxpayers' money. In fact, when he was suspended, do you remember, and nobody would stand in for him and they just showed the footage of the matches?
Went up.
Exactly.
It was the first time I'd watched Match of the Day in 38 years. I just turned it on just to see what it was like and I thought, no inane wittering from Gary Lineker. I still didn't watch it to the end because I'm not really into football.
No.
How many people in the team?
11 players in a team. You must at least know that, Andrew Pearce. And also, Peter has said Miss Lineker is the highest paid of all those on the BBC, as far as I'm aware. He's entitled to his opinion, of course, but not to use a huge platform that is the BBC to spout forth his political agenda. This brings the BBC into disrepute as the national broadcaster, and they should act before it gets out of hand. A lot of you agreeing that it's time for him to go and he's not worth the hassle or the money.
We'll see what happens. Now, the Bank of England's going to announce its latest interest rate decision in the next hour.
Let's go live to our political editor, Christopher Hope, in our shiny new studio in Westminster. Good morning, Chris, in our lovely studio. We haven't even been to visit it yet,
They've not invited us.
No, this is true. Right, interest rates this afternoon. What are we expecting, Chris?
Well, we're likely to see the Bank of England holding them at 5.25%. I think that's an indication, I think, of where the politics is in this decision. Where I sit, I'm viewing it all through that kind of Westminster-type lens. That vote this week by the Tory MPs, by a majority of 44, larger than you might expect, was as much about small votes as ensuring that Mr Sunak isn't forced into an early election early next year. I think he's going to go long into the back end of next year because rates are forecast to fall to about 4.25%, as Liam Halligan, our economic editor, was saying earlier today. I think that's where it's going, and I think that's why the government is keen to get past this freezing today. That we are seeing, of course, the economy shrinking by 0.3%, most recent numbers, but that's a reaction, I think, to higher interest rates, and they're hoping it might come down, and then that might make everyone's mortgages feel a lot better and more affordable this time next year ahead of an election. That's where I think that's going, and I think there's all eyes, though, on midday.
Another headache for Rishi Sunak this morning, Chris. Scott Benton, MP for Blackpool South, in trouble and suspended, and we think that will trigger a by-election.
Yeah, Tory MP for Blackpool South won his seat in 2019. His majority is around 3,600. Was expecting to lose that seat in the general election if the polls are anything to go by. He has been found to have, breached House of Commons rule by an inquiry. He was caught out offering some advice and offering to lobby for a gambling company, Mr Benton. He's been given a 35-day suspension from the House of Commons. That's 3 times more than you need to have in order to trigger what's called a recall by-election. So what will be happening now is in Blackpool South, local people there will have 6 weeks to say if they want to have a recall by-election. If more than 10% do want to have one, then there will be one, a red wall by-election, probably I expect in April or May into his being an MP. Coming on top of the Peter Bone expected by-election in Wellingborough. So you're going to see these big tests early next year, which will be very difficult for Mr Sunak. He's expecting to lose both, one would have thought, certainly the Blackpool South to Labour and probably the Wellingborough by-election too. So not easy, but it never rains but it pours for the PM. But he's on good form at the moment, Andrew and Bev. He was at a party last night with Tory MPs making jokes about the mafia and about the 5 families and Mark Francois and the like. In private, he's quite chipper. You might be surprised to hear.
I am surprised to hear.
Well, we've got a Tory MP with us. Chris, thanks. Tom Hunt, MP for Ipswich, is here. Were you at the Christmas party last night in Number 10?
I was, briefly, yeah.
So you're never at Number 10, because I saw you going in for breakfast the other day.
Yeah.
What were you fed with?
So when I went to Tuesday morning, there's bacon rolls, fruit salad. Obviously I quickly had a bacon roll before the meeting started and then cracked on to
Why is Rishi Sunak so chipper?
Well, he was, I spoke to him last night. We started off actually by talking about our respective football clubs because he's a big Southampton fan and Ipswich have currently got a 12-point cushion over Southampton. So we had a quick chat about that.
What division are you in?
Right.
Championship. So it looks like Ipswich should get promoted to Premier League. But we went straight to business. And I really want to be able to get behind this bill. I really want it to work.
So just so people know, you abstained.
I abstained.
One of the 29 who abstained.
Yeah, which is pretty unusual at second reading. Last time a government was defeated at second reading was 1986.
Yeah.
But I voted for 2 previous bills that I hoped would nip this problem in the bud in terms of the small boats. And yes, there has been a 30% reduction, but we are still in this position where we've got
that's all to do with
crisis.
The weather. Isn't that to do with the weather?
I don't know what it's to do with, but we've still got this major problem, and that's because we don't have a deterrent. Until we get a workable deterrent, this is still going to be a major problem.
So you want the bill toughened up?
Yeah.
How?
I don't want it to have any chinks in the armour. I think if that bill has any chinks in the armour, I think it would be ruthlessly exploited by left-wing lawyers and it'd be stuck in the courts like it has been previously. There's some issues around individual claims and also Section 39 orders from the European Court.
So would you, in your dream world, take away any right to appeal?
Look, I think we've got to cut off all avenues. I think we've got
So no appeals?
No, not at all. No, I think that our Parliament, our elected Parliament, should rule supreme, not international law and not international courts. This has gone on for too long. We need to have a robust policy bill with no chinks in the armour. So that's what I'm pushing for, and that's what colleagues are pushing for.
So somebody who's 7 months pregnant and not feeling very well, you don't think she would have a right to appeal to not to be deported to Rwanda?
If you have come to our country illegally and you've broken into our country illegally, I'm sorry, you know, I think you should be deported.
But we have a long, proud tradition of allowing some people who are very much in need, who are fleeing death, persecution, women, children, of being allowed to settle here and build a life here. So you're saying none at all?
Well, I mean, I must say that sort of 85% of these people coming from France, which, by the way, is a very safe country, are single men.
You think they're economic migrants?
Well, I mean, they may have come from France, so it must be, because if you're a refugee, you apply for asylum in the first safe country. I certainly would.
Yeah.
And they're going through multiple safe countries, so by that, then they are not refugees. But look, ultimately, you know, I want us to continue to have a compassionate approach to the most genuine of refugees, but that is only going to be possible if we have the capacity to do so. These people coming illegally from France are undermining that capacity and working directly against the interests of some of the most vulnerable people in the world.
If you can't get it tightened up, because I can't see that the lawyers are going to allow a system of no appeal whatsoever, are you going to vote against the bill?
Look, I mean, but there's a lot of colleagues who I've been working with. Bill Cash is one of them. So, colleagues who I respect enormously, and frankly, particularly with somebody like Bill Cash, someone who's got more legal knowledge and expertise than I do. So, you know, I'll be listening to what he's got to say. I'll be listening to what some other colleagues have got to say. And ultimately, you know, we did have that meeting with the Prime Minister on Tuesday. He did make undertakings to us. And I think it's right that we give him that opportunity.
But some big legal brains are backing this bill. I'm thinking of Geoffrey Cox, the former Attorney General, Lord Sumpton, no patsy at all, former Supreme Court judge. He says it would be fine. And Lord Pannick, probably one of the most highly paid lawyers in the country, if not Europe, he says this is going to work.
Well, actually,
so why don't you trust their judgment?
Well, we've had a range of different legal opinion. I mean, we've also had the Star Chamber, which raised significant concerns about the bill.
But they're not in the same league as lawyers, the Star Chamber, are they? Bill Cash is a great man, but he's not a lawyer in the same...
It's not just Bill Cash on the Star Chamber.
No.
You've also got people like Martin Howell, who's on
is clever,
KC.
yeah.
You know, you've got some top lawyers on that. Sumption's it wasn't an in-depth opinion he gave. It was very shortly after the bill was published. He put out a few lines.
Yeah, we've tried to get him on here.
It wasn't a thorough response to what's happening. So look, there's a range of different legal views out there, and for those of us who aren't lawyers, it does make it slightly challenging. But you know, taking everything into account. And the previous history of the way in which these things have gone, and any chink being ruthlessly exploited, I just felt that it needs further toughening.
Why did you abstain, Tom, rather than vote against it?
So it's very unusual to have massive rebellions at second reading. Generally, at second reading, it's about the broad principles.
Right.
And the broad principle, stopping the vote around the scheme, I support. So I therefore didn't feel like it would have been appropriate to have voted against. Yet at the same time, I don't think it's quite where it needs to be. So when it comes back to third reading, that's when we're going to be talking about potential amendments, and that's when we're going to be talking about strengthening of the bill. And obviously, we all have the decision to make at the end of that process.
And will you abstain then? Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's... I will not be abstaining at third reading.
Your vote's for or against?
Yeah, at third reading, I would. That is what I'll do.
What do you think of the truly shocking headline in the papers today of how many of the people who've come across on boats have been deported? 1 measly %.
Yeah, and I think the only sort of occasion where it's different is with Albania.
But even that's only just over 400.
5% in Albania.
It's pathetic.
Look, I find all of this, and that's why I've taken the position that I've taken on this bill. You know, that's why I've myself and a few other colleagues have taken the position we've taken. We strongly feel that enough is enough, and we feel as though immigration is an issue, and actually not just the illegal.
Are the people who are processing the applications deliberately sabotaging it?
Well, I mean, I think that... So it's interesting that the Labour Party say that the response to this thing should just be to process claims more quickly. Well, if that remains rubber stamping people's claims of people who shouldn't be here, then that is not the right approach. But, look, I mean, I think every single person who comes here illegally from France should under no circumstances stay. Not a single one. None of them. You know, they have come illegally from France, which is a safe European country. They have, you know, they've broken our immigration law, which I think is the same as breaking any other law, and they should be treated as such.
But you see, your colleague Tobias Elwood was on the show this morning, and he made, I thought, a very convincing defence of the fact that the numbers on the boats, effectively is what he was saying, are so small that it's an irrelevant distraction from the mass migration, effectively, of 1.2 million people who came here last year. And it means that you, as the Conservative Party, are overshadowing the successes that actually Rishi Sunak is having on reducing numbers via student visas or families of people who want to come and work here.
Well, let's get this right. The latest net migration figures are like 670 odd thousand.
Correct.
Last year 700,000. But that's not a.
Yeah,
that's not where it ought to be.
But Tom, 1.2 million.
No, I'm not. This is deeply concerning. This is deeply alarming. So I don't see that's a great success story. See, that matters hugely. I published a paper on it, net legal migration. I published a paper on it. I mean, I obviously think it matters. But illegal, there is something particularly pernicious about illegal migration and unfair about it as well. The sense that we do not have control of our borders, the fact that we don't have the ability to reject people who we don't want to allow in. And there's fundamental questions here about international law, international courts. For me, our elected parliament should rule supreme. That's what people wanted in Brexit, and that's what we ought to get.
And would you want to see the ability for people to apply for asylum here from a safe country online and make that application fairly to our government, and we can then say yes or no based on their personal circumstances? Are they male or female? Do they have children? Are they pregnant, like Andrew says? Do they genuinely need harbouring from a murderous regime? Do you want to see that?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question about, people who are already in a safe country, who therefore, they're in a safe country, they refuse to claim asylum in that safe country. There's an interesting question about whether they should have a right to apply, to choose between, to shop between different safe countries. I think that's an interesting question. But frankly, even if you did that, you'd have to put a cap in, because of the current looseness of a definition around refugee. If every single person who thought they're a refugee around the world could apply directly to the UK, and there wasn't a cap, you would be looking at
that's when I think we could be sovereign.
Just very briefly, because I want to ask you about Gary Lineker. If we had a human rights lawyer on, they'd say, no, they're not breaking the law when they cross the channel to come here, that because of all the asylum conventions that we're signed up to.
Well, we're in change the law. I mean, ultimately...
But you said they're breaking the law. They are or they're not.
They are breaking the law. They are breaking the law. Every single person who illegally enters our country from France is breaking the law. But ultimately... when you talk about the Asylum Refugee Convention, I think it's very outdated. I think it needs to be dramatically changed. The European Court of Human Rights has overreached itself time and time again. All of these, we cannot allow these conventions and rules to stymie our elected parliament. People have had enough, and we've got to get it. We've got to get action.
Should the BBC sack Gary Lineker? You saw what the incoming chairman, Samir Shah, said. He's breached the social guidelines rules with his attack on one of your colleagues.
I mean, he should have gone a long time ago, right? But I don't believe in the BBC licence fee either. I mean, the shame is I actually think Gary Lineker is quite good when he sticks to his actual job. Right. I mean, I love football. He's actually quite good at Match of the Day. It's just such a shame that he can't just stick to his job.
So he should be fired?
I mean, I think he should have been fired a long time ago, so yes.
Right, very interesting.
All right, thanks, Tom.
Tom Hunt, MP for Ipswich, who are apparently going to be promoted to the Premier League. There's some football knowledge I never thought I'd be able to share with you.
Right, still to come this morning. Just a warning, there are some violent pictures we're about to play here.
And it is football. Turkish football leagues have been suspended indefinitely after a football president attacked a referee.
He gave him a right hook there. We're going to be speaking to a former referee a little closer to home about the dangers of risks of wearing black and white stripes on a Saturday afternoon in this country. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:25 with Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
OK, just a warning, there are a few violent images coming up here. You might have seen this story. It's the president of a top Turkish football club. He's resigned after punching a referee at the end of a match. The president runs onto the pitch. He literally hooks the referee, gives him a heck of a black eye. Faruk Koka, he's been arrested now. He said he was embarrassed and saddened by the incident.
And someone kicked him while he was down on the ground.
Did they?
And the referee who was assaulted has now quit refereeing in football. We're joined now by the former Premier League referee, Mark Halsey, to get his take on the risk refs face on the pitch every day. Mark, morning to you. That was savage and unprovoked and brutality. And, I mean, apart from that, he should be banned from football. That bloke should be locked up, in my view.
Yeah, morning, guys. Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, it's utter appalling to see that, especially in any league, in any whether it's grassroots or it's professional game, and it's so sad that the referee has resigned, because you know he needs to help and support, and even in Turkish football they need good referees at any level, and so I'm hoping that someone is supporting him, and I'm hoping we get him back on the field of play, because I've seen him referee in Champions League and Europa League games, and he's a very good referee. And as I say, it's absolutely appalling, and the club should feel the full weight of the Turkish Federation, and the president concerned. I know he's resigned, but he should face a jail term, in my opinion.
I mean, look, you know, emotions run high in football, let's say. There's an understatement. People get very passionate about the results. It's almost a surprise that this doesn't happen more often, in a way. But are we seeing this kind of thing, Mark, happen on a more regular basis now in football across the world at all levels? And why do you think that is?
I think it's society today. You just got to look at, you know, social media, you know, all the stars and on social media, the abuse they get, and it's just seems to become part of the norm because we're not tough enough. You know, our policing, our social media sites have got to get a lot tougher with these people that dish out all these keyboard warriors, and it's grassroots football I'm concerned about. You don't tend to see it in professional football. Because obviously the security is so great, and we have lots of respect for our officials. But it's grassroots and the young referees that I worry about that are not getting that protection.
Mark, can I interrupt you? Are you saying at grassroots football, which is really important, that's where the David Beckhams and the like are going to be discovered? Are you saying that the referees in those games are being given a hard time, by the spectators or by the players?
Absolutely, but spectators and parents. You know, we often see under 14, under 15 referees refereeing these games, and they're receiving abuse weekly from the parents and the coaches. We see it all the time. And the county FAs have got to step up their protection of these young referees. We've got to employ, or the clubs have got to employ, more mentors to look after these referees as soon as they arrive at the ground where they're refereeing. And as I said, the county FAs have got to step up and sort these clubs and these spectators and the parents out.
What a shame, Mark, because ultimately those sorts of sports leagues rely on volunteers. And how much would a ref get paid to do a minor league football on a weekend? What are they going out, running around in the cold? What are they getting paid for that?
I think they're looking at £25, £30 for yeah, it's not a lot.
They're not doing it for the money, are they?
No, they're not. This is the future of our game. The game needs referees. And these young referees that are starting out at 14 and 15, they're our future to go on and be the next Howard Webb, Michael Oliver, because there's no doubt about it, Michael Oliver is by far our best referee in English football. And these guys look up to these, and I think it's down to the professional players, the managers, to set the right example when we see them on the TV at the weekend. And at the moment, I don't think they are setting the right example.
Mark, when you were in your pomp refereeing some of our famous footballers, who was the most famous one you either red-carded or gave a yellow card to?
Oh, I mean, I was renowned not to give too many yellows and reds out, but I think one was John Terry and at Manchester City v Chelsea. And after the game, he wasn't happy, and we had a good 15, 20-minute chat in my dressing room after the game regarding his sending off. Obviously, I can't divulge what was said because I couldn't say that on air. But what went on in our dressing room stayed in our dressing room. So, yeah, listen, and I think he won the appeal anyway. So I must have been wrong. Correct.
And when they swore at you, Mark, when they swore at you, because we all know there is a bit of swearing goes on pitch, did you turn a blind ear to that?
No, I gave them some back. Listen, it's on any walk of life. It's shop floor language, isn't it? You're working on the shop floor, and as long as it's not directed at you, you know, going out to referee today is about managing the event, managing the players, and getting and earning that respect. Just walking on the field of play don't mean to say you get the respect from the players. You've got to earn that respect with your accuracy and your decision making and the way you approach the players. That makes a massive difference to refereeing a football match.
Did we just ask you about women's football? Because we do very, very well in this country now. Our women's team is one of the best in the world. Do we get this same sort of aggression with the refs and with the crowd in women's football?
I think you do. I mean, listen, it's fantastic to see women's football the way it's progressing over the years. I think it's brilliant. And yeah, of course, I mean, once they become professional, it's like rugby. Once they become professional, there's different attitudes towards the referees. And I think that's going to be the same with women's football, because they want to win. They've got that desire to win and go out and win things. Yeah. So you're right. It's all about emotions and frustrations. And as a referee, you've got to understand that frustrations and emotions with players. And that's what it's about. Not about refereeing the laws of the game. It's about understanding the game and knowing the game. So yeah, I think it's fabulous the way what the women have done.
All right, thank you, Mark. Mark Halsey, their former Premier League referee.
What a nice bloke.
We did quite well on an interview about football.
Considering I didn't know anything about it.
But, you know.
I had heard of John Terry. No, I had.
He was England captain, wasn't he, John Terry? Even I know that.
Yeah.
Right, still to come this morning, we're late for the news. Sainsbury's and Tesco make £300 million from your personal data in those very attractive loyalty schemes. Are you OK with that? That and much more after your morning's news with Sophia.
Thank you, Bev. It's 11:32. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB Newsroom. The father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have pleaded not guilty to her murder. The 10-year-old's body was discovered at her home in Surrey in August. The day before Sarah was discovered, the 3 defendants left the UK for Pakistan with 5 children before returning a month later. The trial of all 3 will be in September next year. Committee on Standards is recommending Scott Benton be suspended for 35 days from the Commons following a lobbying scandal. An investigation was launched after the Blackpool South MP was filmed offering to leak confidential information to gambling industry chiefs. Mr Benton was secretly being filmed by reporters for The Times who offered him between £2,000 and £4,000 for 2 days' work. The Parliamentary Committee has been looking into the allegations that his actions caused significant damage to the reputation of the House. It's the 6th day in the search for a missing woman who was last seen in Norwich city centre. Gaynor Lord was last spotted on CCTV cameras on Friday afternoon. Norfolk Constabulary says it is likely the 55-year-old may have entered the water, and underwater search teams have scoured the river. Miss Lord's belongings, including clothing and a mobile phone, were found in a park near her workplace. And more than 370,000 people in England have been waiting for over a year to start hospital treatment at the end of October. That's down from more than 391,000 at the end of September. Eliminating all waits of more than a year by March 2025 is one of the government's top priorities in their 5-point plan. And you can get more on all those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
For exclusive, limited edition and rare gold coins that are always newsworthy, Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2662 and €1.1599. The price of gold is £1,607 and 7 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 7,718 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
11:38, you're with Britain's News on GB News with Andrew Pearson Bedtone. The news you could hear off was Cara Malone, of course, who came back in, talking through all the breaks, as usual.
Not me.
Now, new research suggests that working from home during the pandemic may have stopped people quitting smoking.
That's
really?
right. More good news about the lockdowns. So the number of Brits logging in from home has skyrocketed. Is working from home the future for Britain? Well, joining us to discuss this is former Tory MP Neil Parish and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Hello, both. Now, we think that at some point we might stop talking about the working from home culture, but this is going to be part of our working landscape now, isn't it, Rebecca Reid? And I imagine you, for one, would applaud this.
Yeah, I think it's here to stay, and I think it's here to stay because people like it. And also, the majority of the research almost actually universally says that people don't work any less hard from home, they're not less productive. So yes, people might put a wash on at lunchtime or maybe take a shower in the middle of the afternoon between meetings, but they're still getting their work done, they're just doing it with a little bit more autonomy. People want that. If you're hiring the right people, you should be able to trust them to work without being supervised.
I mean, you're a novelist, Rebecca, so it suits you, I guess, to work from home. You're also the mum of a young child. That will also suit you. Do you think it's also good if you're a young person in their 20s, you've not yet met the person you might have a child with, and actually spending all day at your kitchen table is probably not very good for your mind?
I mean, I'm 31 and I've been a journalist and writer since I was 22, so I've worked from home for pretty much my whole career, and it did not stop me from going out and snogging boys. You're not really supposed to be at work to find people to get with or flirt with, and you're not really supposed to be at work to be having a long chat about the Kardashians. So it's not necessarily a problem. I think hybrid working is generally regarded to be the best possible outcome for everybody. People like to be able to go in for a couple of days when you have all that really face-to-face brainstorming communication time. But people also really like to be able to have some music on in the background or have complete silence. The only time it's not a good thing is when people are trying to do childcare and work at the same time. That doesn't work. You do have to still have childcare.
OK, let's bring Neil, the former Tory MP Neil Parish in. Neil, we all had to lock down during the first lockdown. The whys and whether we should is an argument for another time. But it would be very difficult as an MP to work from home full-time.
Yes, I mean, I think it depends on your character, really, because, I mean, naturally, being an MP, I'm a social animal, and so, therefore, I like the socialisation. Of course, the House of Commons is a gossip shop, let's face it, and so you're there to really pick up on the information that's going around, and you wouldn't pick that up, remotely. So I think flexibility is the answer. I do actually worry a bit with some people working from home for too long, because I think socialisation is a good thing. And I also think, both for the employee and the employer sometimes, I know you can email each other, ideas that you've got, but I think there's nothing better than sitting down over a coffee and having a chin wag. All right, some of it might be social stuff, some of it might be a bit of flirting, who knows? But in the end, I think it's right. And I just feel that we are social animals and we need that interaction. So I think the hybrid, I would agree, with Karen, that hybrid it works. But I think some people definitely work too long from home and don't socialise enough. So I think we've got to be careful, both from an employee point of view and from an employer point of view.
And actually,
I know
Rebecca, also from a health point of view, because this story is about the fact that people who might have ordinarily quit smoking, during lockdown, they were puffing away, having a fabulous time in the back garden. I don't know about you, but I drunk myself into a stupor in that first lockdown. My liver had never known such abuse during that sunny few first weeks. It's not good for our health, is it, to be sat at home?
I think for a lot of people, it's better for your health because it enables you don't have that commute either side of the day, and you have your lunch break. So lots of people will walk, will take a dog for a walk, will go and pick up their children on foot. It gives you back some of that time. I definitely, during the breaks in lockdown, found that I would go to the gym way more because I wanted an outlet to go and do something physical. I think the smoking thing is a little bit of a shot in the dark. I was a smoker during all of the pandemics. And I smoked more than I ever had in my entire life because I was bored, because it was a treat, and because someone told me that smokers were less likely to get COVID. Very visible to say, yeah.
There was a bit of data about that. She's absolutely right. There was a bit of data, but I think it's a bit complicated reasoning for that. Neil, last word to you then. You think this is something we're just going to have to work out, and employers are going to have to work with it, but not let the lazy take the mickey?
Definitely not. And like I said, let's also make sure we mix enough and get together, because otherwise there is too much drinking if you're not careful when you're at home, and smoking, dare I say it. And Karen, I don't think smoking does do a lot of good, seeing off COVID, quite the reverse. So I think you're a little bit of misinformation there, but this happens. But no, seriously, I think, let's have a good mix and let's try and get people out and mixing together when they can, because otherwise I think we'll become sort of too insular, and some people will, become recluse if you're not careful, reclusive. Yeah. And I know I may be exaggerating, but I think it does have, a social effect on your well-being. Yeah. And so let's look at it all, really.
Okay, all right. Thank you both so much. Rebecca Reid, novelist, and former MP Neil Parish there.
Well, Karen Malone and Sam Lister are back with us. Sam, I couldn't bear that first lockdown work. We brought the Daily Mail out from home, all of us. One person was in the building, had to press the buttons literally to let the pages go. Did you struggle?
Yeah, it was the same for us. And as soon as we had the ability to go back and work in the office, me and the rest of the team
were
back in.
Well, you were all deemed, what was the word?
Essential
work.
Yeah, which I was absolutely relieved about, because the thought of working from home the whole time would have just been too depressing. Yeah. I couldn't bear it, and we certainly only really got through that because we were actually in the office and we had that permission to
And is everybody back full-time now in the office?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, this is it, some jobs you can do from home, but you certainly can't do the job I do from sitting from home. You need to talk to people. It's about communication. And you cannot just do that sat messaging people on your phone.
Yeah. Malone, you work from home a bit.
I do, yeah. But Rebecca just said there's no data to support the fact that working from home is detrimental to results. Yes, there is. There were 2 councils in the last few months put it out to investigation, and the results came back, and the councils fiddled with the results to say that it worked because it suited them to say it worked. Yeah. You look at our civil service now.
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell me that hasn't suffered. You're trying to get a driving licence now. Truckers try to get a licence. They can't since the pandemic because no one is actually in the building. Jacob Rees-Mogg, works on it, he had a big rail against the civil service because the offices were empty, and he said the services are suffering. We see that every day. But I think people like working from home. I don't believe for a second that you get more work done at home, because everyone needs a boss. I certainly need a boss. Yeah. I need someone to say to me, get that done right now. Yeah. Don't mess about. And you need telling, and you need the creativity of being with other people. Yeah. Especially in our job, sometimes you're sitting in a room with people and you're discussing stories. You need input from other people. And yes, you can do it on Zoom, but it's not the same.
No. I agree.
No, I think honestly, it makes a massive difference as well if you've got young children, or even just children, and you want to be able to get a little bit of balance, and you want just 1 or 2 days a week when you don't have to do the commute. You can actually pack a lot in those days. Yes. You can get a lot of work done from home when you're not managing kids
if you're
and
on the tube or a
as well,
train,
if they're at school.
you can work on the tube and the train normally too.
Yeah.
The tube not so much, but the train you can.
I do have some sympathy with the point you make, Bev, because actually I think, particularly for women, if you do have caring responsibilities, let's face it, they do generally fall on women. So whether it's looking after small children or elderly parents,
100%.
The hours you spend commuting seem like wasted hours. Yeah. And if it is something you can do from home and combined with those, you know, I think we ought to be open to that.
Yeah.
But I think the default setting of let's just let everybody work from home, that doesn't work.
And we have to think about the cost on humanity. I mean, it sounds like a grand claim, but actually what we were saying then about where do you meet the person you might eventually have your families with if you don't get out of the house
But you know, on this working from home, ministers keep saying get back to work. Why don't they make the civil servants get back to work who report to ministers?
Completely, but I feel sorry for it. If I was an employer and my workforce was refusing to come in, now I'm still paying them the same money as I was paying them before, and a lot of those wages include allowances for traffic, I would go nuts. I would want the workforce I was paying in the office with me. Yes, Bev's right. You can probably do a couple of days a week, but I think generally you should be in the office. And I think what the pandemic's done, it's fed people this belief that they have a divine right to work from home, and they don't. You know, if an employer said, "I'm paying you to come in,"
And it also gives a divine right for the state to pay for everything.
Completely.
It created a dependency culture that didn't exist before.
I think the pandemic has changed the culture of this country in terms of, you know, the work ethic of this country. I think it's changed entirely since the pandemic.
100%.
And I think that's a shame.
Shall we talk about David Davis? Friend of the show, friend of all of us. We're all a big fan of his. He has done a remarkable thing, Sam. What happened?
Heroic. I mean, let's just start by saying that David Davis, although he's of a certain vintage now, he was a man who trained as an SAS reservist, so he's not.
I didn't know that.
Not a man who shies away from a tricky situation, let's say. But he was walking out of Parliament the other night. Witnessed a homeless man being attacked by two other men.
Terrible.
He says they were taking 7 bells out of him. They were really, really going for this man who was not defending himself in any way. And so he and Gitu Harry, who used to be Boris Johnson's communications director, intervened. And so David Davis waded in there, stopped this attack, took the homeless man home, put him on his spare room overnight.
Good on him.
And looked after him. And I think he was still bleeding in the morning. That's how bad this attack was. He went to hospital. He is recovering now. But what an amazing thing to do.
Yeah, Davis took him to hospital the next day, which is amazing. Yeah. And what I hadn't realised was he said when he was younger, he had seen a man being kicked to death. Yeah. And so he intervenes all the time. And he says that in the past he's lost teeth, he's been punched.
Well, look at his nose. That nose has been broken 5 times.
Yeah, by
it's
him.
It is a boxer's nose.
I look at him in an entirely different light.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm looking, and it's sort of a fancying light. I'm thinking, big, strong, man now.
Made him a little bit more attractive.
And in August, every August, he goes Munro walking. So these are like mini mini Scottish mountains, and he'll do one a day, and it would somebody of our age would probably get through one. He'll do 40.
Sound even more attractive by the second.
Carol, can I just remind you?
Chasing him up those Munros.
I just have to remind Caroline she is married.
I am a gorgeous man.
And so is David Davis.
Much younger. And
we've been talking about this all morning. I really want us to discuss it. This is the supermarket data loyalty scheme. Sam, do customers know what they're signing up to? Do you think with these massive bargains?
No, you don't. But I think you should always, you know, in life, there's no such thing as a free lunch, is there? And the fact that you are signing up for these loyalty cards, surely when you sign that you must know that there is a condition attached to that. And I've tried to resist signing up for some of these, but actually they make it absolutely impossible.
That's what bothers me.
£6 off a bottle of gin, apparently.
It's more than that.
And the rest.
I did a shop on last Saturday, 120 quid's worth of booze, and I got it for 50 quid less. Because of the card and because they had a little offer on.
And what's she waiting to tell? She's already drunk it.
And on that note, I will be back tomorrow evening doing Jubes, and I'll be back then on New Year's Day morning. Have a wonderful Christmas from me, if you don't see me before then.
But you're stuck with me next week, so I look forward to it. See you then.
Here's Emily and Tom.
Well, we're coming to us a little bit early today because there's some big news breaking at 12, but also we're talking about the scandal of how few people have been deported after small boat journeys. We'll be talking to 2 members of the Home Affairs Select Committee on that.
Yes, we will. And will your mortgage go up or down? We'll find that out at midday from the Bank of England, so stay with us. Good afternoon, Britain, but first, let's get the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another dull and damp afternoon for the southeast of England. Brighter skies elsewhere, but with blustery showers.
towards the northwest. We've got a weak weather front moving through. That's bringing a lot of low cloud and some outbreaks of mostly light rain and drizzle, and that will settle upon East Anglia and the southeast for the afternoon. So largely cloudy, some outbreaks of rain here. Elsewhere, brightening skies after a grey start, some sunny spells coming through. But for the north and west of Scotland and for parts of Northern Ireland, it will be windy with showers moving in. Now, where we've got the sunny spells in the west, temperatures reaching the double figures, but it will feel on the chilly side towards the southeast where we keep the low cloud, and that lingers for a time into the evening. Later on it does clear and there will be some mist and fog forming across southern and eastern parts of England, South Wales. A touch of frost in places here as well with lighter winds, but with more of a wind further north and thicker cloud moving in, I think it will largely be frost and fog free to begin things on Friday. A bright start for many, but increasingly cloudy across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland, and some high cloud moving in across England and Wales as well. So not entirely sunny. The best of the bright weather this time will be in the southeast, increasingly wet and windy towards the northwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist. And you survived? I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with Newsroom.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good almost afternoon, Britain. Yes, it's nearly 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 12th of December. We're a little early today, on the 14th of December, sorry. We're a little early because we're expecting big interest rate news at 12. Also,
Home Office failure. Less than 1% of those arriving on small boats since 2020 have been deported. That's according to new government figures. All the while, many of the rest languish in expensive accommodation. The cost of the Big Stockholm barge has been revealed for the first time at an astonishing £41,000 a day.
the search continues. It's been nearly a week since 55-year-old mum Gaynor Lord vanished after leaving work in Norwich. Fresh CCTV footage has been released showing a frantic Gaynor rushing through the city centre and dodging traffic. We're on the scene as the search operation enters its 6th day.
Not another one. Rishi Sunak is braced for yet another by-election as the Parliamentary Standards Committee recommends an extraordinary 35-day suspension for former Tory MP Scott Benton. If approved by the House, that's grounds for a recall petition.
And it's just 1.5 minutes until we hear from the Bank of England over their latest interest rate decision. This is, of course, big news for many people with mortgages, for many people looking to get mortgages. Might payments, as a result of today's decision, go up or down?
Yes, we're expecting for that rate to remain as it is for the time being, but of course we never know what might happen. You never know with these things, but the Bank of England is expected to hold it. We're going to be talking to Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor, about this, who joins us from the Bank of England. Is he there? Yes, he is. Liam, what are we expecting?
You know, Emily, I'd love to be able to give you and GBNews viewers and listeners, and maybe Tom too, some good news that there's going to be a pre-Christmas interest rate cut. I have to say, though, the balance of probabilities is that there won't be. Interest rates have gone up very steeply in recent years in the UK, of course, from 0.1% all the way up to 5.25% where they are now. They've been there since August, and in just a minute's time we're going to hear what the Monetary Policy Committee that sits in the building behind me, the Bank of England, 9 economists who set interest rates, what they've decided. I think it's pretty nailed on. They're going to keep interest rates at 5.25%. Inflation is coming down. It's come down all the way from 11.1% this time last, or at least last autumn, and now it's 4.6%. But it's still pretty high, and so I think they're going to keep interest rates where they are. But very interestingly, mortgage rates, the commercial interest rates, where we get mortgages, where we get business loans, personal loans, they are coming down quite steeply now because financial markets reckon that inflation's going to start really tumbling. It's been held. Well, there you go. Santa didn't quite come. A lot of people wanted an interest rate cut because a lot of families are suffering from much higher mortgage payments than they previously had because 2-year fixes, 5-year fixes have expired. You can see their interest rates have gone up all the way from those emergency levels back in 2020, 2021 in the aftermath of lockdown. During the COVID pandemic, of course, they were low. The staircase to the right, the 14 interest rate rises to 5.25%. The question now, Tom and Emily, is when will interest rates fall? I reckon we're going to see an interest rate cut if inflation continues to fall by March, maybe April, from 5.25 to 5. But for now, no surprises. No surprise also that it's raining here at the Bank of England. This is England. No surprise that the Bank of England has held interest rates, as we all expected, at 5.25%.
Liam, of course, yesterday we heard some pretty gloomy news about the state of growth in the economy. Many people blaming those interest rate rises, for doing their job, really, for depressing consumer demand. Is that going to feed into future decisions from the Bank of England? Perhaps now's the time to take that sort of squash off consumer demand.
Well, you're right. We did see the economy contract, according to figures out yesterday, contracted by 0.3%. The UK's still been growing recently. It's been doing pretty better than a lot of the countries in the European Union, not as fast as the US. The economy has been quite resilient. But look, Tom, when you raise interest rates 14 times in a row, which is what we've done, that does squeeze borrowing, that does squeeze lending, that does mean businesses invest less, it does mean consumers buy less because of their mortgage payments and their other debts that they have to service, and that slows down growth. And those interest rate rises, they often work with a lag, and they've been squeezing economic activity, and that was reflected in the figures, the GDP figures we saw yesterday, which showed the overall size of the UK economy contracting. But you're right, this is what interest rate rises are for. They squeeze out activity, so they squeeze out price rises and inflation, and we've seen that. We've seen inflation come down from over 11% to just over 4% now. Still too high. The Bank of England's target set for it by the government is 2% inflation. But the Bank of England now, as the months go by, they're not really meant to worry about growth. They're not really meant to worry about interest rates crushing economic activity. They're meant to be focused on inflation. That's why they're independent, because politicians always, they're going to want growth, aren't they? But I think that the fact that the UK economy has contracted quite sharply, that will play into their decision-making over the coming months. But it all really depends on the headline inflation figure that comes out on the 20th of December. If that figure starts with a 3, then I think people will start to believe that an interest rate cut is coming sooner than the Bank of England thinks. The Bank of England has been talking about interest rates maybe being cut in late summer or autumn next year. Financial markets think the cut will come much quicker, but if inflation comes down sharply, Tom and Emily, then I think expectations will shift and people will start looking for an interest rate cut in the early spring, and that means mortgage rates will come down. So if you are on a fixed rate deal and you have to get a new deal, wait if you can, because I think mortgage rates in the market will start to carry on heading down, increasingly so, particularly if the inflation number out on the 20th of December is a number that's pleasing, a number that's falling rapidly.
Liam, I apologise to our viewers for that construction noise that is battling against you. But Liam, could you break down...
Plenty of economic activity.
There is, that's good to see.
There's plenty of economic activity. There's no GDP contraction in the construction industry, that's for sure here.
That's good. Liam, could you break down for us, again, why exactly, if the interest rate is held at 5.25%, why are mortgage rates coming down?
That's a really, really good question. Yeah, why is that bloke on the telly talking about mortgage rates coming down when the Bank of England has just held interest rates? That's because mortgage rates are set by banks and lenders that compete with each other, and they charge more than the Bank of England base rate. Of course they do, that's how they make their money. But the margin between the Bank of England base rate and the mortgage rate that they offer us, they're playing with that. They're competing on the size of that margin. It's because the banks think that the Bank of England will start to lower interest rates quite soon, and that means that they will be able to fund the mortgages that we need in the future for less money, so they can offer us lower rates now in order to get our business, so their competitors don't get our business. We're seeing mortgage rates coming down quite sharply. The average 2-year fix now just went below 6% for the first time in a long time, because financial markets are betting that the Bank of England's being too gloomy and that interest rates will start to fall sooner than the Bank of England is saying. I agree. I've been saying this for quite a few months, as have some other people who cover financial markets closely. And that's why I say again, if you are a fixed rate mortgage and your deal's going to expire and you need to do a new deal, wait as long as you can, because the outlook for interest rates, the consensus view about where interest rates are going to go, which drive financial markets, which drive money markets, which drive how much our mortgage lenders borrow money for before they lend it to us. The view is that inflation is going to fall sooner than the Bank of England thinks. Those interest rates are going to come down sooner, which means a better deal for consumers. It's called competition, Emily. It still exists in some parts, at least, of the British economy. for the benefit of consumers.
And Liam, just finally, what does then that mean in terms of the politics of all of this? Of course, it was the case, rightly or wrongly, perhaps slightly unfairly, that Liz Truss was blamed for those interest rates going up in the first place, when, of course, they went up in many countries. Does that mean that if mortgage rates are starting to come down and perhaps going to come down more over the next 12 months, the government might get some credit?
Look, we discussed that mini budget endlessly, Tom, you and I, on telly, off telly. The reality is that interest rates are now higher than they were at the height of the mini budget. They're higher in the money markets at the height of the mini budget. There are many things Liz Truss got wrong, but I don't think she can be blamed for rising interest rates. Interest rates have been rising around the world. But look, here's the thing, Tom. A lot of people are saying, oh, Rishi Sunak, he may have a no confidence vote. There may be an election soon. And I agree with that. I've been saying that for many weeks. But if Rishi Sunak can avoid a no confidence vote, if he's not forced to go to the country by a combination of the Labour Party and some of his own party MPs voting against him, I personally think that the Tories will play the long game. Why? The reason they'll play the long game is that they want to drill into the heads of the electorate the fact that the economy is improving. If we all start talking about the fact that inflation isn't coming down, but now inflation is low, it's approaching the 2% target, interest rates are coming down, they start with a 3 or even a 2, mortgage rates will start coming down, consumer spending will pick up, borrowing will pick up,
well,
the housing market
you're talking about drilling down. I think we're going to have to leave it there just because of that loud drill. But I know you can barely hear us, but we've got the gist of what you were saying over the drill, and apologies again for the construction noise. Liam, thank you so much for bringing us all of that outside the Bank of England.
Yes, so shall we see, sorry about that construction noise, but what Liam, we needed to hear what Liam was saying, and I hope you did at home. Let's see what the feeling is out on our high streets and our markets, though. Will Hollis is at the medieval Christmas market in Lincoln. Will, you've been speaking to people there at this Christmas market. What have they got to say about interest rates and the state of the economy?
Yes, well, I guess it can't be described as a Christmas miracle that interest rates are going to be staying the same, but it's certainly the kind of thing that people would prefer to see than a rate rise. We're here right now at St Mary's Le Wigford in Lincoln, where the medieval market has literally just got so people in here. Let's see if we can find somebody that might be able to speak to us about that reaction for interest rates. Just really quickly, sir, we're live on GB News. Interest rates have stayed the same. The bank rate has stayed at 5.25. What might that mean for you and your finances this Christmas?
Very little, to be truthful. We bumble along just as we are, whatever they do.
And then because